Oh my god.
It's working.
It says stream starting soon on my screen. This looks promising to me.
All right, let's just screw the intro. Let's just get freaking started. Oh my god. Y'all, I literally had to download a new program. I'm not using OBS right now. I'm using Streamlabs.
We killed Obadiah. He's dead. He's dead, and we've replaced him with someone else.
OBS was crashing literally every single time I hit go live. I did not defeat OBS, Morgan. OBS defeated me. I had to reinstall a new program. Luckily, Streamlabs is pretty easy to use and allowed me to easily import all my stuff over from OBS, thank God. Otherwise, it was just going to be literally me and Tom, and you would just see my face, and you wouldn't get to see the chat or the episode. And Tom and I were briefly talking before we got the stream started, like, oh, maybe we just don't have the episode up and we could just do a little bit more of a free-form discussion, which I think we could still kind of do, Tom, even though we did manage to get the episode, but
we've lost so much time. I think it might be wise to just kind of skip Amphibia.
Yeah, so we're probably going to skip Amphibia this week. Sorry, guys. Just a couple brief thoughts on Amphibia. They were super fun episodes. I love the theme of bringing back old villains to join the team. Good stuff. Love it. Excited to get emotionally wrecked for the next 3 weeks. So that's all I have to say about Amphibia. So let's just get into Owl House. There's a lot to...
Let's just get into Owl House.
Before we get into it, I just got to say thank you to everyone who was patient with us this morning. Who's in the chat right now? Morgan's here. Rooster's here. Shia's here. Thank you. The Curmudgeon, thank you for keeping the chat busy while we were struggling. Hyrule is here too. And Maurice and Marcelo, a couple of new folks are here as well. Thank you all so much for your patience and, just waiting for us to deal with all these technical issues. We really, really appreciate it. Let's get into it. Anyway, this episode was crazy. This episode was so awesome. We had a lot of stuff that we kind of saw coming, honestly, in this episode. I don't think that there weren't too many surprises, so to say, in this episode, but it didn't stop from punching so freaking hard. This episode hit us right in the gut. I saw one comment that someone made describing it as a punch that you could see from a mile away. You could see it coming, but it's still gonna hurt once it hits you. Exactly.
To no one's surprise, obviously it did turn out that Bellows was in fact Bob Hoskins this whole time. We all knew that was going to be the case.
Yes, that got confirmed finally.
It finally got confirmed. They stopped with the whole Philip Witterbane charade.
Exactly.
And they gave us what we all knew to be the truth.
Exactly.
To absolutely no one's surprise.
And yes, exactly, Hyrule. Are y'all ready for some trauma? I'm ready for some trauma. Let's go ahead.
This mama is ready for trauma.
This mama is ready for trauma. This was definitely a traumatic episode. If I were to give one little nitpick to this episode, this is just a personal... this is my personal nitpick. My one criticism of the episode is I'm not a big fan of when episodes start in the middle of the action and then we have to go back a little bit to okay, this is how we started. But that was that was my one nitpick for this episode, was the way it started.
that was my nitpick as well. It's it starts and I'm like, oh god, I hate this structure is awful.
Right, exactly.
But it kind of you understand why they needed to do that, because they had to cover it feels to me like the content of this episode perhaps was meant for a two-parter.
Yeah, maybe.
And maybe the first half would have been an adventure that led, Darius and Eberwolf and Rain, thinly veiled Darius, Eberwolf and Rain, to the point where they activate the spell. It would have led, Luce and Hunter would have had their kind of A plot and B plot that would have led them to the same point. And then the episode would have ended with them going inside Bellows' mind, and it would have been what? They're in Bellows' mind? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Because I feel there's thankfully so much of the nature of entering someone's mind has already been covered in a previous episode.
Yes, that was
brilliantly done. But it does feel to me like there was a lot of setup here.
Yeah, that got kind of rushed. Yeah.
I don't want to say it got rushed because it didn't feel rushed, but when you scrutinize it, you can look at it and think, I can see this having perhaps having been planned as a two-parter initially, but they really had to I think considering they're up against the clock here,
it works.
This episode was just insanely good.
It works, and it was great, and I'm okay.
We're all here for Daddy Darius.
We're all here for Daddy Darius, 100%. Okay, so we're here, right? We're here in this like, portrait landscape thingy, right? Luz is like, has no idea how she got here. She's like, what the heck? And we can see, right? We see all these portraits, right? And we get a closer look at them in a bit. But Luz finds this one, right? This is the portrait of the petrification ceremony that we saw at the end of season 1, right? So there's Bellows, there's Ida, there's Luce and King and Lilith here too. And then the title under the portrait here is called Triumph Over Wild Magic, right? So this is very much like, as Luz says, right? This is the constructed false mind, right, of Emperor Bellows, that it's actually kind of creepy and brilliant the way that Philip/Bellows was able to construct this within his mind, right? Like the layers of deception and falsehoods and like wearing these false masks that Bellows has like developed throughout the years has like led to this like layering of his subconscious, right? To that.
Well,
I don't know.
I didn't interpret it as a layering of his subconscious.
Right, of course, his conscious.
I interpreted it as very much like an intentional thing on his part. I thought, he clearly has total control, like complete lucidity.
Yes, definitely.
He was aware, like we knew, to some degree we knew this was going to happen. Like he was completely aware of the scrying potion for a start. Do you remember they did the scrying potion and he turns to the camera and he's just like, what the dick? I think that was the line. I think that's what he said.
Exactly.
Like, what is this? But like, I guess I interpreted it as just a measure of how powerful he is. Like he actually has control, and lucidity over the inside of his mind.
Yes, totally.
As like a mindscape, which is mad and cool and terrifying. But yeah, I think as for like this layering of outer self and inner self, that I think is really, really important, and we should revisit it later on where we get into the religiosity of the episode and the religiosity of Bellows as a villain, because there's so much just raw stuff that is implied by like a very specific line. Like it's not. They reveal so much in this episode. They don't just like we already knew Bellows. This is the thing that makes the episode work so well. Like, we already knew Bellows was Witterbane. Like everybody who's been switched on for the past several weeks knows that he's Witterbane. But there's a thing that he says that we didn't know that changes so much and adds so much to him as a villain. And we'll get into that.
Totally, 100%. So yeah, they start off the episode right, like, oh, we're in the Emperor's mind, and then Hunter's like, oh yeah, do you remember what happened at the night market? And we get this little rewind, right, where we see Hunter at the night market. We see this guy who's trying to trade teeth with him, which is quite funny. And it's like, oh, why would I trade teeth? That's unsanitary. But Hunter doesn't really care about that. He's here because he heard whispers, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, of an attempt of to invade the Emperor's mind, right? So this is interesting. First of all, we have to acknowledge the fact that Rain and Darius and Eberwolf are freaking working together, and I love this so much. I literally cheered when I saw this trio together because like I love this little like team of like misfits who are rebelling against.
They're more than just misfits though. They're like an actual crack team of revolutionaries, and I love that so much. I'm so excited to get more of Eberwolf because obviously we've had a sufficient amount of Rain to kind of get a grasp of who they are. We've had a sufficient amount of Darius to get a grasp of who they are.
Yes.
I want to know, like, why is Eberwolf revolting? Like, I really love the idea that Eberwolf is like this feisty little splob.
Yeah.
Who we haven't heard talk yet. I really like the idea that Eberwolf, the first time we hear them talk, they're actually really eloquent and polite.
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, that'd be funny.
they're like the brains of the whole operation. That probably won't happen, but I'd be very happy if it did.
That would be pretty funny. I would either love that or just that him just being like a silent feral splob would also be great, I think.
Anything they do with this character is going to be fun.
I mean, okay, like, can we just acknowledge how funny and how great these designs are with these three like wearing the cloaks? Like with Rain, you just see their glasses, and with Darius, right, of course we see his gloves. And Eberwolf, we just see his like eyes and hair like poking out of the hood. It's just really great, really funny. I love how obviously to the audience it's still easily identifiable who these characters are. And obviously Hunter doesn't know who they are, but I just thought this was really fun. And of course, Rain using their bard magic to set up the potion, and Darius using his abomination magic to help with the potion, right? These are things that Ida does not currently have, and so why Ida wasn't able to get this to work, whereas they are, right?
And I feel like I do feel as though this was an attempt of theirs to actually assassinate Bellows.
Oh, that would be interesting, yeah.
What better way to do it, right? There'd be no evidence they were ever there. Bellows would just not wake up one day because they killed his mind.
Yeah, because I was
kind of just not wake up one day.
I was kind of wondering.
Perfect espionage.
Totally, because like I was kind of wondering like what is the plan, right, for the three of them to go into his mind? Because I was like, oh, if they get caught, if like Bellows sees them, then like they're screwed, right? So
yeah, but maybe... what do we know? What do we know from the Willow episode, right? What happens if they destroy everything?
Right, exactly. So that could have totally been what the plan was.
Well, it could have been to destroy everything. It could have been to simply manipulate what was in there. I don't think it would have worked because clearly Bellows is a hell of a lot better at manipulating his own mind than any outsider is.
Yep.
But it's, I don't know, like I'm really loving I'm just really loving Rain at the moment. The last time we saw Rain was such an about face.
Yeah.
They're such a badass, and it's just nice to see them being full-blown revolutionaries.
Yes, I love that. I am so excited for this team. And obviously, like, they do still have to work with Ida a little bit, so I'm curious to know how that's gonna play out. But we get this scene here, right? So Luz is here to try to repair her cloak that got damaged. Ida is trying to, get in touch with this, like, prim and proper person. And meanwhile, we see King and Luz talking on these walkie-talkies, right, which will become important later. And it's just kind of interesting. They've got, obviously, Ida has a bunch of human stuff, so of course she would have these walkie-talkies lying around, which is fun, right?
I think this actually reveals a major plot hole in the episode, because the walkie-talkies neither walk nor talk, and I think they should be counted for that.
Bad episode, 0 out of 10.
I give 0 out of 10.
And also, can we just acknowledge that King is learning Spanish, and that's the most adorable thing ever? I love that so much.
Not doing very well at it, but it's very, very cute.
Nobody's trying, and it's adorable.
And that's what matters.
Exactly. That was in Spanish, buddy, but I read you loud and clear. It's very sweet, very, very adorable. I really love them. And then we find out, right, that this Taylor lady is not actually going to help them because she has eventually joined a coven, right? She has inevitably given in to the fear, right? Bellows saying that wild witches are dangerous and anyone who's like associated with them is going to get punished too, right? So obviously using fear as a major tactic here to try to get people to join a coven and to get these sigils on their hands, right? Which we know is an important part of Bellos's plan. And we get this like outburst from Luz too, right, where she's really angry about it. She can kind of like see somewhat of what Bellows really is, and she's like, I bet he can't even speak to the Titan. And of course everyone in like these hushed tones are like, oh, is she right? Like, don't let him hear you say that, don't let the Titan hear you say that, right? They're all super scared, right? It's clear that fear is like the primary thing that's like motivating these people.
Which, again, I feel like that's something we should come back to later with the religious implications.
Yes, definitely. And, Ida's saying, like, Emperor's, he's been here for 50 years. People don't want to change what they know, right? And even King has a line here, right, where he's like, people don't want to feel like they've been following the wrong person all their lives, right? So, like, I think like that's very true to real life as well, right? Like, why do people like stick to their guns
Yeah.
so badly. Like, why are people so stubborn in
And
their views sometimes? And this is like a real thing, right?
yeah, and it also applies to the really to the groupthink of organized religion.
Totally, 100%. Yeah, there are a lot of religious connections in this episode that like were there, but like this episode really highlighted those
And
parallels.
it honestly makes me feel like such a dumb idiot baby for never having like pieced it all together until this point.
Yeah. I was thinking, I have been thinking of like the Coven system as like this allegory for colonialism, essentially. And I feel like that's something that they're basically like hammering home in this episode.
Good old-fashioned colonialism.
Yep, exactly. So Luce does see Hunter running, right? So she ends up following him. She wants to question him, get some answers, right, about what Belos is up to for crimes against the Emperor under arrest. So Hunter does try to take the three of these guys down, right? But before he's able to do that, Luce tackles him and, can I bug you with any questions, right? She has her clicky pen, which is quite cool. And, Hunter being like, human. But
I
of course,
love I love the idea that she genuinely thought she could get anything out of him.
right? I like how Luce is like, she does see Hunter as just like this sad boy, right? Like,
Well, I mean, he is.
she doesn't really quite consider him evil in the same way that she considers Bella's evil, right?
Or even a threat.
Totally, she does not see him as a threat whatsoever. And so Rain, Darius, and Everwolf end up escaping, right? Rain uses a spell to get them to disappear, and of course Hunter is really upset about that. He pulls out his palisman, but as he is stomping around in anger, he squishes the vial that was on the ground that releases the potion and that activates the spell. And of course that's how they end up in the Emperor's mind, right? So cool setup, cool way that they got here. Wish they could have just started us here, but oh well, whatever, nitpick.
That's how they end up in the Emperor's ass.
That's that's how they got the Ant-Man powers to shrink and go into the
They
Emperor's
go
ass.
inside the Emperor's ass and they expand. And that's how they defeated the Emperor in this episode. Like, the show's over,
Show's
guys.
over now. Guess we didn't need the third season after all.
You didn't need the third season. They just shrank and went inside his ass.
Oh my gosh.
Top 10 characters who could beat Thanos.
Yeah.
Luce Noseda with the Ant-Man potion.
Stop. Okay, anyway. So they end up in the Emperor's mind, and Hunter's like, wow, you thought I would help you? Like, you're so dumb, right? And Luce is just like, well, now that I'm here, I can just learn what I want, right? I can just find the truth for myself.
And she kicks him in the nads and runs off.
Yeah.
Straight in the nads.
Oh my gosh. Could you imagine? Anyway, she says, like, weird enough, though, I've been in Willow's mind once, but it had more trees, right? And Hunter has this line where he's like, oh, that makes sense because the mindscape reflects the individual. I've read a lot about the mindscape, right? So Hunter thinks he, like, knows what he is talking about, but it's interesting, right, that like when we do get into like the true Belos mind, that it is a bunch of trees, but it's all like decayed and like all, the trees like don't have leaves and all that stuff, and in this hallway, right, it's constructed, it's not natural, it's not trees. So I think this is to add to that idea, right, that this is like a constructed version of Belos's memories, right, a falsified version that is not actually the real truth.
And it's a palace.
Yep, and it's a palace, so I think that has some implications as well.
Big ol' ego. A
100%.
very overbloated sense of self-importance.
100%. And then, Hunter is still interpreting these images the way that, he was told, the lies that he's been told, wild magic wiped out our family. This is something he still believes at this point. And he has this line, right, where like everyone knew too much and got themselves hurt. And this is such like a messed up manipulation tactic that like Belos has instilled in, the population and in Hunter, like this idea that like your own freedom is hurting you. And so I, as like this all-knowing protector, have to come and like show you what's right? Like that's so...
And that's the Puritan way, isn't
exactly,
it? Right?
Like robbing of agency, robbing of like choice, robbing of freedom.
It's the ideology of Puritanism. And if you think the Puritans thought that the Catholics were living life too colorfully. Like, think about that.
Right,
I'm
exactly.
serious. Like, they were like, no, you need to have the most like boring, drab life that's completely governed by our predetermined idea of like predestination in Abrahamic terms. It's like just God, the Puritanism of this character is really showing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I feel like the parallels are just becoming more and more clear as the story goes on.
I think you mean absolutely.
Good one.
It wasn't a good one. It's okay. We can just ignore that like the bad fart that it was.
And even like this painting, right? Like this painting that you see of Bellows, where he has like one hand up and he has like one hand out like this, and he's got like these lights that are showing, and all the witches around him are like looking up at him in reverence, right? Like especially the way that his hands are in this photo, like just really reminds me of like those depictions of Christ, right? Like those Christian photos where Christ has got his hand up and he's like blessing the population, and I'm just like, this is like exactly like one of those paintings, and it's those parallels are really being hammered home here.
He's got his hands in the air like he just don't care.
Exactly, exactly. And then this is a very interesting portrait too, right? And we get an interesting line here, where we see Hunter getting his staff, right? This is when I inherited my staff. Bellows doing this like huge ceremony that he probably like doesn't actually care about. Um, and we see some of the coven heads in the back too, right? And this was an interesting line too that I heard from Hunter, where he says like, "Did you know that I was the youngest Golden Guard to be appointed? I'm the youngest scout to become Golden Guard." I thought this was
Yeah.
interesting because we don't know too much about the Grimwalkers. We don't know too much about the previous Golden Guards. We learn a lot in this episode about it, but this line got me thinking about the previous Golden Guards, and I'm wondering if Bellows has some kind of like determination on how old these clones like end up being when they, get done. Like I really don't know how it works, but the way that I kind of saw this is that Hunter is the youngest Grimwalker so far. And in my head, like that makes sense to me, because if Bellows was like trying over and over again, right, to like make this clone that was going to be loyal to him, it would make sense to me that he would like keep trying to make them like younger and younger to make them like easier to manipulate possibly. So it made sense to me that like Hunter would be the youngest of the clones that came so far. So that's kind of how I interpreted this, but I don't know if that's actually accurate or not, but that's just my theory.
Are you saying that Bellows is a nonce?
I mean, I'm not saying that.
I mean, yeah, no, I kind of, this isn't like a counter interpretation. Like, there's no reason that these interpretations can't
Right.
be like kind of one and the same in a sense.
Right.
I kind of figured that like the Grimwalkers were actually wising up from generation to generation, and they were
Oh.
getting smart to the reality of their situation, younger and younger and younger.
Maybe, yeah. That could be it too.
And it's like immediately followed up by that line about, oh, Darius looks sad here for some reason. Of course, we
Right.
know from the other episode, the Any Sport in a Storm, we know that Darius's mentor was the previous Golden Guard. Now, this is really
Exactly.
interesting because this, on one hand, explains why Darius had an initial
Like
I
connection to
don't
Hunter.
I don't want to go as far as to say resentment for Hunter, but like a disregard for Hunter, like a replacement of someone he cared about
Right.
immensely.
Right.
Um, and because he just like the whole episode is just him dismissing him, just like go away, go, just leave me alone, go look for recruits or whatever. I've got better things to do.
Right. Totally.
And of course, the episode ends with him realizing actually he really is like a visage of this person I used to care about,
Yeah.
and
And
thus the connection opens. But like, moreover, you and I had discussed the idea that actually Darius has been a dissenter for as long as for at least as long as his mentor has been dead,
or at
right?
least as long as he's been aware that like
Or at
this,
least he's, yeah,
yeah, about this like whole clone Grimwalker process. Yeah, totally.
yeah. Because that gives him skin in the game, right? Like really personal skin in the game, potentially, not just knowing possibly that Bellows killed this person he cared about, but you know, the various other revelations that then come with that, which is then interesting because that if that is the case, then that implies that Rain truly had no idea. You know, they had not been. I mean, why would they, right? If you're a dissenter and you're planning a rebellion, the last thing you're going to do is communicate that to people.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
totally.
Rain being ready to nuke Eberwolf and Darius then carries that kind of subtext to it. But on top of that, you know, that then reframes how we view the end of Ida's Requiem, right,
Right,
as an episode, and because we know, like, you know, it's Darius. Darius is the one who physically restrained him.
right, right,
Sorry, Darius is the one who physically restrained them. So, what then happens behind the scenes that we don't know about, right?
right.
Is that a point where Darius is like, hey, look, I'm supposed to be doing something with you here, but actually, funnily enough, me and Eberwolf here.
Right. Yeah, yeah, totally. I could totally see how that would have gone down like behind the scenes, right? Like Darius maybe just doing his own thing, maybe using Eberwolf like occasionally, and then like realizing that Rain was also like working against this, and then deciding to kind of team up at that point. Like I think that's most likely how that went down.
And then
Um,
they started a band.
but I just want to acknowledge that I love Darius. Like Darius is quickly becoming one of my favorite like side characters in the show, just because of like how complex he is and how like interesting he is, and like how much he knows and like what he's doing with that knowledge. Like I just find him to be a really interesting and compelling character, and I'm so excited to see more of him. I'm so excited to see him and Rain working together. Like that's just so awesome. I'm really excited for that.
The clever thing about it, and I really think this is to the testament of really the entire writing team, is that most of this has been done through implication alone. Like Darius
Absolutely.
has not spent a lot of time on screen, but that doesn't matter. It's I like to call it the Fire Lord
Mm,
approach to writing a character,
yeah.
where it's you just all you need is the odd line here and there, right, to
Right.
give them a sense of place and space and character within the
Exactly.
context of the story. You know, just the odd line here and there about who's who and how that connects to someone else
Exactly,
and
right? Like, oh, why does Darius look so sad here, right? Like that's we just needed to ask the question, and now we have like all this info about Darius and like what he knows and how he has this relationship with the previous guards and all this stuff, right? Like it's so brilliantly done. I got to give a huge kudos to the writers.
yeah.
This episode was just so brilliantly done in so many ways.
And you know, increasingly we kind of went from feeling like Darius was just like a cool, not evil, but like a cool chaotic uncle.
Yeah.
And now more and more it's becoming, to me, it's becoming clear that, I mean, they may reveal that Darius actually isn't all that politically involved and it's really just revenge
Mm-hmm.
for his mentor. But like, to me, I feel like increasingly Darius is a true paragon and
Yes.
everything on top of that is just fluff, just for the drama.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I would love that. All right, so you know, Luz is kind of looking around, she's trying to figure this place out, and then she comes across this child, right? And we know, as we have watched the end of the episode, we know that this child is the inner Bellows, but Luz is actually not sure of that at first, right? And I think like this is just one of the the sick, brilliant, twisted ways of how Bellows is just like so good at manipulating people, because you know I feel like it's clear to us that he has like some level of control of how his inner self presents itself within the mindscape, right? He has like that level of control, and so the fact that he deliberately chose to present himself as a child, right? He deliberately chose to like be in this form when interacting with Luz. Like I think he knew, right, that Luz was more likely to trust this child, or like right, be more trusting and be more open to this child than if he were to be in his like present day form, right? So yeah, I just thought that that was so sick and twisted of Bellows to like know that. You
So
know,
I think really the moral of this episode is if a child is crying and seems to need your
just
assistance,
punt them.
just kill them. Just
Yeah.
kill them. Like they're probably trying to manipulate you. You'll be
Exactly.
doing the world a favor.
Exactly, right. And then this creepy kind of like blobby bellows-shaped figure, you know, that kind of looks like he's made out of stars shows up. And Hunter thinks that this is the inner Bellows, right? And asks that Bellows help them get back to the physical world. But obviously something is quite off here. We as the audience know that this blob is actually not evil, right? That this blob is actually made up of all the Palisman souls, but of course, as they're being approached by this gooey, multi-eyed monster, they are fearful, and so Luce, you know, ends up using a glyph to get them to escape, and they end up falling. Right? I love this visual. Sorry,
here's my question. Here's my question to you.
Yeah.
What about the horns? Like, why does this creature resemble Bellows? Like, if this creature is the amalgam of all the souls of these Palisman that he's absorbed over the many decades,
why does it look so much like Bellows?
Why does it look like Bellows? And like, there was part of me that wondered, because there were paintings in the background of this episode, like some really grim paintings that I'm surprised, honestly surprised, made it past the censors. And I've actually I've got an image of all the paintings here if you want me to like send that to you so you've got it.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm just going to copy it and dump it in our personal chat on Discord.
Sure.
I want, like, the paintings imply that Bellows Witterbane killed his own brother / friend. We don't specifically know if they're related yet, but killed his brother / friend.
Yeah.
And part of me wondered, because on top of that, we can see in one of these paintings that actually the mask that the kid is seen wearing, and the mask that would sort of become the various iterations of Bellows' mask, was carved by this person, the brother / friend.
Right.
It kind of makes me wonder if there's a bit of him in there. Like, I don't know. Like,
that'd be interesting.
Very flimsy, but like, I was kind of wondering, why do they look like that?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. That's interesting. And that's an interesting question.
Is it a projection of his guilt at all? Like, is there any guilt in there at all? Like, it doesn't feel like it.
Doesn't feel like it. Does not feel like it. Yeah, so this little kid Bellows, right, who ends up being the inner Bellows, is telling them, like, no, this thing is evil, right? And Luce, of course, believes the kid and not the big scary monster. It's like, come on, Luce! Like, you should know by now not to judge a book by its cover. Like,
I just had a dumb thought. Can I please share this?
Yeah, go ahead.
There's a line in the Plinkett review of Revenge of the Sith that just came to mind when I was looking at that image of Hunter like knelt down before this huge blob creature.
Yeah.
Hunter pledges allegiance to the monster mash and his eternal allegiance to the graveyard smash.
Oh my god, yes, absolutely, 100%. Oh my gosh,
this
silly.
episode really is a graveyard smash.
It really is in many ways. I really love this visual of when Hunter and Luce like break through the wall and they're falling, right? Like, it tears like paper. I really love just like that visual.
It's so thin, like,
right, exactly.
So
it's flimsy. Thin. It's all lies. It's not foundational. It's not solid, right? So I just love the implications of that visual. Just a really beautiful detail that I enjoyed. Luce ends up using the little hover catchy spell, right, that we saw in a couple previous episodes. She ends up using that to catch them as they fall, right? And I was kind of going back and forth, Tom, about whether we wanted to talk about the paintings as they show up, or whether we wanted to like talk about the paintings all at once, like at the end or whatever. Maybe. What do you think we should do?
I think we should. If we have any like immediate pressing notes we want to make, then I don't feel like we should stifle ourselves there.
Yeah.
Because we can always just revisit all the paintings. I've sent you the picture with all of them on, so you can pull that up for the audience's benefit. Those two there, which ones is it 2 or 3? I can't quite
there's
see.
2 here. So the 2 that we're seeing here on screen right now there's Bellows and, young Philip and his friend / brother
carving the mask on the right,
and they seem to be like churning butter or something on the left. So,
and then the one, churning butter, as people do in those times.
As they do, yeah.
That's what everybody did in those days. We all used to churn butter. I say we because I was obviously alive then.
Of course. But I think like what we can get from these initial 2 paintings, right? It seems to be that the brother is the older brother. That's kind of what it looks like. There's the brother
Yeah.
carving the mask, right? That was given to Philip, and that Belos's current mask is kind of resemblance of. And also in these portraits, right, the brother's face is deliberately scratched out, right? And I think
Yeah.
like something that I thought saw a couple people like misinterpreting a little bit, in my opinion, of this episode is that these paintings are meant to be like representations of these memories, right? Like it's not necessarily that these paintings are exactly the way the memory happened, like that frame happened in that scene, right? Like that's not exactly how these paintings work. They're meant to be like representations of that memory, right? And so like I think like in some of those ways, some of these can be interpreted in certain ways, but I think it just is interesting, right, that the brother's face is like deliberately scratched out of like all these paintings, right? And like there's these scorch marks and everything. So there seems to have been like a deliberate attempt
Yeah,
from
purposeful
Bellis.
erasure.
Exactly, to like remove this person like from his history, right? Exactly. Like there's some
He's
sort of
trying
resentment
to,
there.
what you're saying is he's trying to cover up his search history.
Yes, exactly. He did not
And
use a VPN and now he's trying to delete his search history.
he did not, he forgot to go into incognito mode.
Yes, definitely.
And
Okay.
now Luce and Hunter have found his weird fetishistic proclivities, shall we say.
uh, okay, so we have all these portraits here that we see now. I won't get too into detail into them right now, but it does seem to be the childhood memories of Philip and his brother. And there seems to be some sort of like scene of them playing like Hunter and Witch. But we'll get into that, I guess, a little later.
A little later.
Little later. I have not been reading the chat. I'm sorry I'm ignoring all of y'all.
It's because we hate the chat and we
No, it's
don't
'cause
want to talk to
we
you.
just have so much stuff to say. He's
We do
literally
have
trying to
so much
suppress his
stuff.
memories of this person. Yeah, exactly, Morgan. That's exactly how I interpreted it. Philip and the original Hunter were brothers. Yeah. Um,
What do we think the original Hunter's name was?
so a lot of people have been calling him Caleb, which I think is kind of fun. Because we heard Hunter call himself Caleb, in one of the previous episodes, and so it'd be interesting, right, if the brother's name was originally Caleb.
I think the brother's name was Bob Hoskins.
Yes, clearly. So Hunter ends up finding this like shell of a palisman, right? That is also a bird, interestingly enough. So I think it's important that he did find a bird, right? And as this palisman is like dissolving in his hands, right? We see his hands trembling, and I think like this episode is really crucial in Hunter realizing, right? Of course, in many ways, this episode was crucial in Hunter realizing who Bellos really is, and I feel like this bird dissolving in his hand was such like a perfect lead-in to Hunter being willing to question, right, and being willing to open, because we know he has this like loving connection with his palisman. He genuinely loves Flapjack.
He says, "I love you" over the walkie-talkie.
It's so
It's
precious.
just so precious.
It's so precious. I love him so much. And so we know that like he does have like this fear, right, of Bellos killing his palisman. And so like I think like that love for his palisman and this fear of like what will Bellos do to his palisman if he finds out is like the perfect door to open for Hunter to walk through and see who the real Bellos is, right? Like I feel like Hunter would not even want to try to question if it weren't for like this fear for his friend, right?
Yeah, that's the impetus, isn't it? Like I had thought that maybe that would end up being like I don't know about you. I definitely was not expecting Hunter's sort of turnaround to come this soon. Like
Yeah.
I felt like I'm happy that it has. Like I'm not complaining. This is not at all like this is how they should have done it. I thought that they would spend a little more time developing that relationship between Darius and Hunter, and that Darius would be the one. But really it's Flapjack in a way.
Yeah. And I really love that.
I really love it. And I think the way they've ended up doing it is kind of perfect because they just simply don't have the luxury of the time it would take to take the Zuko route of like a slow burn, gradually you know, they just throw this poor kid in the deep end. But the reason it works is that they've considered what would the emotional effect be on this
Right.
character if we just shoved him in, if we just like if basically someone just showed up at his door one day and was like, oh, by the way, your entire life is a lie.
Yeah.
um you know, Avon calling, and then and it's devastating to watch, really, in the end. But I think they've done a great. They've clearly just made some pretty smart strategic decisions in terms of how they're delivering the story
Yeah.
under the
Yeah.
circumstances, and
Totally,
it's great.
totally. Yeah, this episode is so brilliant in so many ways. So Ida and King end up contacting Luz on the walkie-talkie, right? And we find out that Flapjack is with them too, which of course leads Luz and Hunter to working together as Flapjack and Ida and King are working together to get them out. Luz says we may kind of sort of be trapped in the Emperor's mind, right? Which is kind of funny. And then Ida just being like, how did you do that? Never mind, we don't have time, right? We just got to get you out.
We've all been there.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Classic. We've all accidentally got ourselves trapped inside the Emperor's mind.
Yeah, so we've all tripped up in the night market and accidentally stumbled our way into the Emperor's mind as it happens.
Yeah, and let me tell you, he really should delete his search history because I did not like what I found in there.
Truly, truly. Oh my gosh. So Luz asks, right, can there be two inner selves? And Ida responds with, no, but strong emotions can manifest and materialize in these ways, right? I don't remember if we saw that in the Willow episode. I don't think so, right? All we saw was the inner Willow being on fire because she was angry, right?
Which we've also all been there.
Which of course we've also all been there. Who hasn't had their inner subconscious identity burst into flames to destroy all of our memories that have caused us harm, right? Who hasn't been there?
But that's the same thing, isn't it? Like it's like
Right. I mean, it is.
It's different in Willow's case because that's like almost like a post-traumatic response.
Yes, right.
In a sense, whereas with Bellows, you get much more of a feeling that he's gone through and like with a fine-tooth comb,
right. It's deliberate,
in a calculated way.
Yeah,
in a calculated way, has erased certain aspects of his memories, but the memories are still there. Like he hasn't got rid of them.
Right. Yeah. But he's reframed them. Right. He's like, yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting. I really love the way that this mechanic works. So Hunter's freaking out. He's like, oh, we're going to be trapped in a subconscious. I told you I read about this stuff, right? And Ida is like, don't worry, we're going to make a spell as fast as we can and we're going to get you out. But, hang on to the walkie-talkie. It's our only connection to you. So Luz is like, over and out. And then we get this very cute, sweet moment with Hunter being like, I'll be home soon, Flapjack. Stay safe. I love you. Over and out. And King and Ida just being like, aw. Like, he really is just like a boy, right? Who loves his pet and wants his pet to be safe. And I really do love the relationship that Hunter has with Flapjack. I think it's not only so crucial into driving the arc of his character, but like it's also, I'm interested to see how this idea with like because like there's also this whole idea with Palisman and being like kind of tied to this idea of environmentalism, right? Where Bellows is getting rid of all the Palisman trees. So there's a lot of interesting allegorical implications with Hunter's relationship to his Palisman that I really love. I really love the way that that's affecting his character, and I'm excited to see how it continues.
We haven't released your Wolfwalkers video yet, but you do talk in that as well about the kind of the implicit relationship between colonialism and deforestation.
Right, totally.
Which it's weird to see that kind of rear its head here as well.
Yeah, totally. There's a lot of similarities actually to Wolfwalkers and what's going on here, and I'm really excited for you guys to watch the Wolfwalkers video. Everyone in the chat, I know you guys haven't had the chance to see what we're working on yet, but it's gonna be so good. It's gonna be so amazing. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I'm the editing I've done, I'm very, 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 very proud of.
It's amazing. It's really amazing. So Luz ends up, trying to talk to the inner Bellows. She's like, oh, you don't seem as scary as your inner self, right? So it's clear that she has kind of fallen for this ruse. And I do just want to point out the portrait that's going on in the background here, right? So we see a hand being held out with like this purple flame coming out of it. So it's clear that this person is a witch. We see the brother slash friend figure walking towards it
Walking
with
towards them, yeah.
with like a
big
smile.
old grin.
Exactly. Yeah. And he's like curious, right? He's like interested. He's not afraid. Whereas we see young Philip in the background, right? He's like holding his mask in like a frightened way, and he looks more reserved. He looks more cautious. So already we can kind of start to see the personality differences between these brothers or friends or whatever, right?
Again, it's really hammering home the moral of the episode that the blonde kid should have just killed the little kid.
Right.
Should have just killed him. Like, would have saved us all a lot of trouble.
Oh my gosh, right?
You know, you see a kid crying, just don't trust him.
Oh my
Give him the old
gosh.
1-2, easy peasy.
Exactly. Luz is trying to, explain to herself who this kid might be. She's like, oh, maybe it's a sense of guilt. Hunter's like, oh, he has nothing to feel guilty about, which, is true. That Bellows doesn't actually feel any guilt. And he's like, oh, maybe it's his sense of innocence, right? Like, yeah, totally. His pure intentions. Oh my gosh.
Those pure intentions that he definitely has.
Right.
I mean, to him, they're pure.
Right.
That's a scary thing about it. Like, he doesn't think he's in the wrong. He thinks he's completely justified.
Right. Oh my gosh.
And I think we need to hit him hard with wood. Twist his arm behind his back till it snaps like a Kit Kat.
Yep, totally.
50 points if anyone could tell me what that's a reference to.
Oh yeah, I don't think I know.
You definitely don't know.
Let's see. Is Hunter's Palisman the Palisman that the previous Golden Guards had? No, I don't actually think so, Morgan, because remember the Palisman was previously with the Bat Queen, and it was part of that ragtag team of lost Palisman that didn't have an owner. So I think the previous Golden Guards just didn't have a Palisman, right? So I think that's also an interesting point, though, right? Like, the Palisman really was like this changing force for the Golden Guard, right? Like, what maybe if the previous Golden Guards did have a Palisman, like their character arcs would have gone in a different way. But because Hunter is this young, first of all, and like has this connection to this Palisman, I think like those are the key differences that Hunter has that maybe the previous Golden Guards didn't have. And of course Luce, right? Now that he has like Luce here to help him. Those are the key differences that Hunter has versus the previous Golden Guards, which I think is interesting.
Previous Golden Guards did not have Luce.
They didn't have friends, right? I mean, really, that's really what it comes down to. So they hop into the portrait to try to escape. Meanwhile, Ida comes back to the outhouse, and she tells Hootie to lock down the house. This was quite fun. I'm glad that, as crazy as this episode was, there were at least like these tiny moments of levity that we got as well, and they mostly were Hootie focused, which is always fun, right? So Hootie
is definitely going to eat Bellows in the end. That's my prediction. I think.
Please.
Luce won't kill Bellows. I feel like Ida might, but I don't think the writers would want to do her like that.
Right.
But Hootie would eat Bellows and not care.
Right.
I think Hootie won't. I don't think Hootie will be necessarily instrumental to like the final battle or anything. That's a Luce Ida thing.
Right.
But I do think when all's said and done, when it's like, what do we do with this guy? Kind of like how Sokka puts a sock in it.
Yeah.
I think Hootie will just eat him.
Right. Yeah, that would be great.
It's like, oh, well, that deals with that then.
I love this little sign that Hootie made too, with like the BRB, and it has like this little Hootie face that's winking, and this like little peace sign that's on the sign. It's just fun. It's just funny. And of course, Rain and Darius and Eberwolf see this from a distance, right? And Rain wants to help, right? They want to do something about it. And Darius at first is like, no, we got to stay out of this. This has nothing to do with us. We're going to get in trouble, right? And he's like, he's got his hand on Rain's shoulder and he's like shaking his head no, right? And this is a great moment, right? This is such a great moment with Darius, right? Where Hootie is talking to Flapjack and he's like, oh, you mean the angry blonde kid is your friend, right? And then we see Darius like shove Rain back and like quickly like lean forward to try to like hear this conversation, right? So like it's clear to me that Darius really cares about
He
Hunter.
cares. That's his dumb blonde
That's
baby.
his kid, right? Like the way that Ida was like, those are my dumb kids. And Darius is like, this is my dumb, blonde, angry boy. Like, I love this implication with Darius that he really does truly care about Hunter. And at first he was like, no, we want nothing to do with this. But as soon as he found out Hunter was involved, he's like, okay, yeah, no, we have to help, right?
I will say what I've always said, which is that this whole story would have gone a lot easier if Luce had brought a gun.
Right.
Like, she could have just shot him back in season 1.
She was from America, right? She probably could have found a gun pretty easy and brought it to the
Pretty
boiling
easy.
isles. And she had the door, like, for a good chunk of season 1. She could have gone back and grabbed one, like, pretty easily.
Like, right. Yeah, this guy's clearly tyrannical. I think I should just go get something real quick.
Just really quick,
just wait
yeah.
here. Just wait here. Goes in, comes back with a Glock.
Oh my gosh. This was a fun gag. I really, this one got a good laugh out of me. And I love Rain as well. Rain is so funny. I know how to get past the bird. Owl, question mark, scratched out. Tube, question mark, scratched out. Him with like
Him.
the arrows pointed to the little drawing of Hootie. This just got a good laugh out of me. This was funny. This was the one gag in the episode that needed the levity, you know. I really enjoyed it.
Just feel like Rain and I just feel like Rain and Hootie were friends before obviously the kind of rift between Rain and Ida. I just feel like Rain and Hootie were friends.
I mean, it's clear that Rain's strategy for getting past Hootie was just to say, like, hey, I'm a secret admirer, right? Like, it did not take much for Rain to deceive Hootie. So I feel like, yeah, there probably was some previous, like, friendship there. Or I wouldn't be surprised if there was some previous interaction there.
If Rain knows Ida, then Rain knows Hootie.
Right, totally. Yes, exactly. It's my angry blonde kid, exactly.
Zoe, you have way too much faith in America's gun control.
Yeah, you really
I'm
do.
sorry, you have way too much faith in America's gun control.
Yeah, Luz probably could have found one pretty easily if she tried. Anyway, jokes aside, so Luz and Hunter end up going through the portrait that they saw earlier, right? They saw this in the palace version of Belos's mind, of Belos leading these witches out of the burning building, right? And we find out the truth behind this incident in this memory, right? Which, again, is crucial for Hunter to see this side of it, for him to start questioning everything that Belos has told him so far, right? And I find this scene also a little interesting because we see a couple of the characters, these like background characters. I think this little kid that we see here and this like 3-headed person are characters that we saw in the time pool episode that Luce and Lilith were briefly talking to as they were trying to find Philip, right? So this is the same town, which is interesting to note.
Yeah, I also saved a picture of that, but I didn't send it because I'm an idiot.
No worries. We got it. And then it's interesting as well too, right? Like we see Belos here. He's like looking pretty worse for wear. His staff is also this kind of like more rudimentary version of it, like a more like prototype almost version of like his staff that we have now.
It sparks out as well.
Yeah, it sparks and smokes and fizzles out, right? So it's clear that this is like the testing phase almost of Belos, right? Like he's really getting his steps in line and he's like figuring this stuff out, right? So this is like the in-between kind of phase with Belos, right? So he's still figuring out the staff, he's still figuring out the sigil magic. This is all in progress, right?
Someone just needs to kick him.
Truly, really.
Can someone just kick him? Someone in the chat?
Yeah, someone in the chat just kicked Belos already. Yeah.
Yeah, Belos wouldn't know what a modern gun is. I don't think Belos could react fast enough. Bullets are very, very fast.
Right. So Bellows gives this spiel, right? The nine lights, the hues, right, or whatever, right, of saving these people, and of course they're quite mystified by this light show, and even
Yeah.
Hunter is still kind of buying it at this point, right? He's like, see, he's always been helping people, but Luce is obviously a lot more skeptical, right?
Yeah.
And then we hear these explosions, and Bellows is like, "Oh, they found me! Run, the wild witches!" Right? Which, of course, is his manipulation tactic. We find out very shortly afterwards that he's talking to this Golden Guard, right? And seems to be one of the previous Golden Guards that he created, right? One of the previous Grimwalkers, and it's interesting as well. I think it's the same voice actor as Hunter. I think it's just the same
Yes.
voice actor that plays this Golden Guard too, right? And so, and this Golden Guard is also a little bit taller, which seems to line up with
Indicate, yeah, different age.
line up with
Yeah.
my theory that that Hunter is probably the youngest one. And he asks, right, like, what about the rest of these explosives that he has, right? And these are like actually just explosives, like these are bombs. These are not like magical, whatever. This is like gunpowder and explosives, right? Like, it's not magic.
Bifurcs on their ass.
Right. And then Hunter is shocked when Bellows instructs this Golden Guard, right, like put on a bigger show and just blow up the whole town, right? And he's quite appalled by that. Hunter is surprised. And then they follow the kid Bellows around, right, and go back out of the painting, and Luce, explains it to Hunter, right, like, it's clear that he was lying. How could you help someone like that? And at this point, Hunter is still trying to justify it, right? He's still trying to like make it make sense to what he understands as Bellows, right? Like, he still thinks of Bellows as like this person who's trying to help, and so he's trying to like come up with these reasons, right? Like, oh, it's probably just like a way to get people to listen to his message, and it's like for the greater good, right? And it's so heartbreaking to like get this from Hunter.
It's getting those, this is the effect that,
right,
that religion kind of has on a person. I'm going to keep making this about religion because I feel like the episode keeps making it about religion.
100%. Yeah, I really do. I like that. I like that theory too, Hyrule, where the Golden Guard mask was probably originated from the first few Grimwalkers not looking quite right. That would be really interesting, actually.
They kept looking like characters out of the Oblivion character creation menu, and Bellows was like, "Nah, that's not right. This is whack."
Yeah.
Those were his exact words, by the way. You'll see.
Exactly,
the episode is coming up when Bellows says, "Nah, man, this is whack."
Right.
Except he's Bellows, so he says it more like, "Nah, man, this is whack."
Exactly. So they jump into the portrait, right? The portrait that was looking very much like Jesus before, where he was showing the light to the people. And, he points to the city that's now in ruin, that, of course, we know is his fault, right? The Golden Guard's fault. Look at what wild magic has done to your city. And then he has this line that I think is very much hearkening to religion as well, right? Like, a city can rise from the ashes, but a soul, right? So he's like coming in with this rhetoric.
Salvage your soul, yeah. God. Yeah. Oh, it's so, like, the religious implications are so... I don't want to call them heavy-handed because they're not. They're just very, very clear.
They're just very apparent. Yeah, they're making it so you can't deny like those parallels, right? So I really love this line from Bellows because it really does hammer home like that religious, like, allegorical part of it, right? Like, I am trying to save your soul. You are all sinners. You are all doing this wrong, and I'm trying to save your soul. Exactly.
Now the thing is, like, we had also talked about the comparisons between Bellows and someone like Oliver Cromwell,
right?
And I'll talk more about that later. But I want to save that until the big kind of reveal. This episode never ever actually explicitly uses any Christian terminology. Unlike something like Wolfwalkers, which is not held back by a Disney censorship team,
right? Of course.
It's interesting to me how sensitive a lot of Christians can be to being depicted negatively in media,
right?
As though Christians haven't historically done some awful things to people.
Right. To
You
put it
know,
lightly.
to put it lightly. But I also think, I mean, I use the term Abrahamic
Yeah.
more broadly because there are some comparisons to be made between Belos and another technically not Christian figure, who I will also talk about later on. But again, I'm going to leave that for the big reveal.
Yeah, yeah. And I think like this line that he has here too really harkens back to that as well, right? Like I can make your magic pure again as the Titan intended, right? So again, like this idea of like saving your soul, I can communicate with God, right? I can communicate with the Titan, and I can like make you pure again if you do what I say, if you follow my
Yes.
scripture, right?
He is an opportunist.
Yes, absolutely. 100%, 100%.
He's a
So
dick bag.
so this golden guard, he like does this light thingy, and then he puts the sigil on all of their wrists, right? And we can start to see like the origins of the coven sigils and stuff, right? And welcome to your new covens. And I also wanted to talk very briefly about this idea of covens and this idea of like covens and witchcraft and Christianity as well too. It took me about an hour and a half into the stream, but I'm about to talk about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Buffy the Vampire Slayer also has like witchcraft and covens and all of that stuff as well too. And I listened to a podcast that discusses Buffy, and recently they released an episode where they we're not talking about an episode of the show, but they were going into like the linguistics and the background of some of these things, some of the language that's used on the show, and like where that kind of originates from and where it comes from. And the reason I bring this conversation up is because they actually had a really interesting conversation in that episode about the origins of covens and the origins of like this idea of like witchcraft and like religion, like where does it come from, right? And actually, like if you don't know the history of like how witches came up as an idea, the idea came because there were these like maidens essentially, right, who were living and operating their businesses without husbands. So they were basically starting an industry where they were brewing beer, right? This is actually like the real history. Like women were brewing beer because that was cheaper in a lot of ways than water, right? Like it's
Is that the new women be shopping?
women be brewing. But yeah, so women were brewing beer, and that's also where you get the kind of iconography of like the witches at the cauldron. Like that's kind of where it came from. And these women were able to sustain themselves. They were able to run their businesses without the help of men. And so what did the church do when they saw these independent women successfully running businesses and making money without the use of men? They of course demonized them and called them witches and hunted them down and killed them. Yeah, exactly. And so like and the idea of covens too, like covens are actually a religious thing, right? Like they are religious sects within.
There are also, I mean, there is another layer to it. I'm not super well read on it, but there is another layer to it of how these ideas intersect with Christianity's own intersection with like Celtic religions and Norse religions, which obviously, you know, even through like the Roman Empire, you know, these are things that were proliferated throughout Europe and throughout what would become the United Kingdom. You know, where these ideas intersect with what could broadly and vaguely be called paganism, and you know,
totally.
It's where these ideas end up becoming sort of blurred with the iconography of witchcraft.
Totally.
The sigils and the icons and the idols, and you know, even down to women being allowed to practice as priests and women being allowed to practice.
Exactly.
Which is something we acknowledge in the Wolfwalkers video.
Yeah.
Women being allowed to practice their faith actively and not just be secondary to a male partner, you know.
And be like leaders within that religion.
Be leaders, right? Yes, absolutely. And now these things start to intersect.
Yes, absolutely.
And you know, words like pagan, you know, I mean, that becomes synonymized, really. With words like witch.
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
Particularly during the Puritan expansion and that, which obviously eventually led to the founding of the United States.
Yeah, exactly.
And
right.
Those ideas were just carried on with them and their ideas. I don't really know if anybody in power truly believed. I think it was just an awful lot of opportunism to make money and to kill people.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, if you guys, even if you guys aren't familiar with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I would highly recommend you check out at least that specific episode. If you look up like linguistics of Buffy, I'm sure you can find it. But that episode, they go into a lot of interesting history about like covens and where it originated from, and I feel like a lot of that is relevant to the Owl House. Like a lot of those ideas are probably present within Belos, right? And so I recommend it. It's fun. It's a good time. Anyway, moving on. So Belos, right, basically indoctrinates these people into the covens, and at first they seem cool with it, but of course the sigil magic ends up like activating, right? And this is kind of the origins of what we see what happened to Rain earlier in the Ida's Requiem episode, right? Where we see like these veins essentially come out of the sigil and like take over this person, and their eyes like blank out and then they fall over. And this is pretty horrifying, right? Like, oh, this imagery was like pretty creepy, and like I can only imagine like how much harder Dana would have been able to go if this wasn't on Disney and if this wasn't a kids show. But this is like legitimately horrifying. Bella's taking their talisman, of course, right? Because he's drinking them up at this point. And then just seeing like this witch, right? Like lying on the ground, like twitching and her eyes all blinked out. Like, and then of course, Luz and Hunter just like looking down at her with this like horrified look, right? Like it's really creepy and really scary and like really hammers home how little Bellows cares about the people, right? Like these are all just like dispensable to him, and oh god, it's creepy.
It's more than that though. It's more malicious than that, because like to describe them as dispensable makes it sound like they're just like a means to, and I suppose they are in some sense a means to a final goal, but that final goal is genocide. Like let's
exactly
be plain here, because the next thing that is said is like, oh, they're still alive, and then he says something, what is it he says, like, I don't know, then I still have more work to do or something like that. Like clearly his like they're doing everything they can to not say the word genocide, while also making it very clear that what he's trying to do is wipe them out.
Absolutely. 100%.
And that is something we will also talk more about later.
Yes, definitely.
I'm disappointed that not even a single one of these witches lying on the ground is collapsed in the Family Guy pose. That would have been so funny.
There are a couple of them that are close, but not quite.
Like, it would have been such a bold move on their part to do that.
No, I'm glad they didn't do that. But yeah, Thidges, I think it's fair to say that he probably did leave these people here to just die in the cold, which is...
They probably died of exposure.
Yeah. Equally horrifying.
I fucking hate this guy. He's like such a detestable villain.
He's so
like,
awful.
Really...
Yeah.
It's interesting because we were talking before about how like King Andreas seemed like a fairly straightforward baddie.
Yeah.
Like he's just a mustache twirling Evel Knievel, and it's like, and then it turned out that he isn't.
Right.
And then Bellows has ended up taking that place as just like this utterly abhorrent.
Yeah.
Through and through, just like he's gotta go. Someone's gotta deal with this guy.
Totally. As they come out of the painting, we see one more painting of Philip, right? Who's like got his hand out to these like witches, and he has like this book behind his back, right? So like this idea of Philip like holding something behind his back is actually something we see in a couple of these portraits. So
yes, it is.
That seems to imply to me, right, that he has like these ulterior motives that he's hiding from the people that he's like talking to, right? He has like his own intentions, his own nefarious like agenda, right, that he's like not revealing to these people.
He's a dork-ass loser, basically.
Yes, exactly. And Hunter, again, like trying really desperately to justify what he's seeing to what he understands, right? He's like, oh, maybe the memories are just wrong. Who knows how mindscapes work? Maybe I'm just an idiot, right? Like, poor thing.
And now it's got to that other stage of like denying what he knows.
Exactly.
To believe this lie, to believe this utter farce.
Yeah, exactly. And so, he tries to go after the kid Bellows, right? He's like really desperate for answers. The Palisman goo monster ends up finding them and chasing them down again. But they end up following, right, the kid. And we cross by a lot of paintings very quickly here. that seemed to showcase the relationship that Philip had with his friend slash brother, right? And very interesting to me as well, as the Palisman monster is chasing them and it like lifts its hands up in this like threatening pose. The portrait that we actually see behind the Palisman monster is this like silhouetted figure of Philip with like his eyes glowing blue, the same way that the monster is, and it's got its hands up in a very similar way. So interesting.
And that was the moment after Witterbane pledged eternal allegiance to the Graveyard Smash.
Right, exactly. And something I'm noticing here too is that in that portrait, we actually see Philip's brother in the foreground of that painting, like looking pretty shocked and scared at this.
He's like, "Oh crap!"
Yeah, exactly. He's like shocked.
He's like, "Oh dang it!" But there's another portrait. I don't remember where specifically. There's another portrait. I don't know if it's like literally the next one.
It is
just
the
like
next
embracing
one.
him.
Exactly, it is the next one of this brother character seeing this blacked out silhouetted Philip and still embracing him, right? So
thankfully he is a big fan of the Monster Mash. So
exactly.
That all worked out.
Yeah, and then the next one after that, right, is the one where the brother is introducing this hooded figure, and then Philip is in the foreground with the knife behind his back, right? So again, holding something behind his back, hiding it from the person he's talking to because he has his own agenda. And then we see the two characters fighting with each other, right, with their knives in the fire.
I find it interesting. The specific knife that Witterbane is using is like, it's like a ceremonial dagger of sorts. Those daggers that have they're like wiggly,
right? They're like zigzag, yeah.
They're like sacrificial, or like ceremonial or sacrificial daggers. They're typically used in media as like a sacrificial dagger. Like
yeah.
God, this is such like this is like a very weird. I don't know why this is the only example I can think of, but I don't know if you guys have ever seen Surviving Edged Weapons. The bit you don't even know what Surviving Edged Weapons is. Don't lie.
I don't know. I was reading the chat.
There's a bit in that with a satanic ritual, and they're using one of those daggers. It's like I don't know why. I wonder what happens if I just Google sacrificial dagger. If it will come up with one just like it. If it'll come up with like I
actually think that there are similar daggers that are used in similar ways in Buffy too, where they like use it for sacrifice and stuff. So yeah, I've definitely
I don't even know if it's necessarily grounded in anything historical. It's just like it's a popular visual shorthand because it looks unique. It has like a unique kind of distinctive appearance to it, where it's not actually so much the most ideal shape for a weapon to be, but as like something of some kind of religious or sacrificial or ritual importance.
Right.
It's a very simple shape to animate. You don't have to do something like crazy with it.
Right. Totally. I'm not sure.
Francisco knows. Francisco gets it. Well done, Francisco, for catching my weird reference. You won the stream. Congratulations.
There's always one person who gets your obscure references, Tom, and it's never me.
It's never you.
One more portrait that we see in the background, right? We see some figure running off away as this other figure is casting a spell at them of some kind, which is Luce ends up, going through this portrait that looks like the portal door, and she holds out her hand to Hunter, right? And I really love this moment between them two, right? Because there's so much of like back and forth going on with Hunter in this episode, where he's like questioning and then doubting and then maybe getting there and then pulling himself back, right? Oh no, maybe I'm just an idiot, right? So there's so much of this like back and forth from Hunter here, and I love that this is a little bit of like him giving, right? Like him actually opening up to Luz and actually accepting her hand and following her through the portrait, right? So I just love that that struggle is really seen in Hunter in this episode, which I really love.
Quite clearly a parallel to the moment at the end of Eclipse Lake.
Yes.
The difference being that while he rejected Amity, he has not rejected Luz.
Yes, at least in this moment. So they end up at the portal door, right? This is the current present day portal door, the one that Bellows has been rebuilding after his battle with Luce at the end of season 1. And Luce now knows, right? Oh, he has the portal. Did you know about this? And Hunter's like, of course, I helped rebuild it, right? He doesn't question it at this point. And I love this reveal too, right? With Bellows saying like, "Oh, I can hear you." And at first we think he's talking about Luce and Hunter, right? But then of course we get this introduction of this character that we have heard be mentioned, but we are actually seeing them for the first time here, right? And actually hearing their voice for the first time here. Do you know who this voice actor is? They sound super familiar.
Who was it for, sorry?
For the Collector. Do we know who the voice actor is?
I think it's I think I was really kind of listening. I think that's Bob Hoskins.
Oh my gosh, yeah, right. If someone knows in the chat who the voice actor is for the Collector, because they sounded familiar to me. I'm curious about who else that they've voice acted. Yeah.
Can I just read something real quick?
Yeah, for sure.
Because not Aaron Burr has pointed out, it's called a Chris blade. Chris were worn at special ceremonies, with heirloom blades being handed down through successive generations. Both men and women might wear them, though those for women are smaller. A rich spirituality and mythology developed around the weapon. Talismans with magical powers, sanctified heirloom. Yeah, so clearly it's like it's kind of like a catch-all, really, for like anything ritualistic or sacrificial or anything in between.
Yeah.
So it's special is the point.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we did see, you're right, Francisco, we did see the Collector in the Albi's memory, but this is the first time we're hearing them, right? We didn't hear them speak in the...
I do have to say, though, I'm slightly disappointed that the Collector is not voiced by David Byrne. I knew that wouldn't happen. Like, why would David Byrne be in the Owl House? But if they'd got David Byrne to voice the Collector, that would have made me very happy. I would have just loved to have that weird David Byrne energy. I might even do an edit where I replace them with just David Byrne lines from interviews.
Yeah. Zoe says that the actress is Frida Wolf. That name also does sound familiar, but I'm curious what else they've voiced before, because the voice sounds familiar. Anyway. So the Collector has this interesting line, right, as we get introduced to them, that I've heard people interpret in a couple of different ways. So she describes Bellows, or sorry, I saw Data said that the Collector's pronouns were he, they, so I'm gonna try to do that. So the Collector says, "To you who stray so far from home," right? So obviously talking about Bellows being in the Boiling Isles, not on Earth. And then the Collector says, "To me who's trapped beneath these bones," which I think is interesting, right? So the Collector obviously needs something from Bellows, and it's unclear how much they're working together. It's unclear how much they are manipulating each other. Like it's really up for however it could go, right? Like, we don't know if the Collector is manipulating Bellows. We don't know if Bellows is manipulating the Collector, but it's clear that they both share at least some goals, right? So they are working together. But what is the Collector's motivation is still a little unclear. So when they say, "To me who's trapped beneath these bones," a lot of people have kind of interpreted that as like they are trapped in the Titan or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, so maybe they're trying to like escape. Maybe the Day of Unity is like their way to like get out of the I don't know, right? Like, it's kind of weird.
I kind of like I don't think this will be the case. I think, God, I just don't know. Like, it's hard to tell to what degree the Collector is the big bad compared to Bellows,
right?
Or if the Collector is simply a means to end for Bellows, and Bellows remains the big bad. Like, Bellows is undoubtedly extremely threatening, particularly at the end of this episode. But part of me kind of wants to believe, operative word being wants. You know, it's not necessarily that I think this is all that likely, but I think it would be cool if the Collector was actually like an outsider kind of character from the Dishonored games. I've mentioned this before. The outsider in the Dishonored games is like this, you know, this ethereal character. They don't actually have a physical form. They did once, but they don't anymore. And now they exist in this plane between worlds, and they can interact with specific people, and they can be summoned by specific people, and they can bestow powers upon people, and they can like manipulate the events, but they're ultimately completely amoral. And they at the end of the day, all they want is to be free. Like, their one motivation really is to be free.
Yeah, totally.
But other than that, they just like to amorally give people power and watch what happens. And they have no interest in whether or not what you do is good or bad. They just want to see what you do because it's like entertainment to them. They have nothing. Like, they really have no skin in the game, quite literally.
Yeah, totally. And like I definitely am seeing the Collector as more of like that kind of chaotic neutral type of character, right? I mean, they talk about like having fun, right? Like the next line that they say is like, we'll play forever or something like that. Yeah, we'll play forever, me and you, when you paint the land in 9 bright hues, right? So it's clear that like the Collector is more about like having a good time and like having fun and being this chaotic like person that doesn't really care what happens to people, but he's like interested in seeing like how this plays out, right? And maybe they are trying to get free, maybe that is their motivation, and they just don't care about anything else and like use Bellows to get to that end, which I think would be really interesting. Their powers are really interesting here too, right? Like they kind of remind me a little bit of like Peter Pan's shadow, right? Like they're stuck against the walls, right? They're not able to kind of freely move around the room, but they are able to like change their appearance and like change their shape into like these shadow puppets almost, right? So they're like kind of illustrating out these scenes against the wall with like these shadows, which is just really fun and interesting. And I'm like really curious to see more of this character. Like I'm so just like intrigued, honestly. Like, who is this character? What is their motivation? What do they want? How are they, actually related, quote unquote, to Bellows, right? Like, are they working together? Is one of them manipulating the other? There's been a theory going around too about the Collector eventually possessing Luz. I don't know how viable that is.
Yeah, like I looked at the drawing that Dana did, and the hair just doesn't look like Luz.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I'm not 100% sure I believe that.
Yeah,
it might happen. I don't know.
I don't know how I feel about that theory, but like it would be interesting, right? Like you said, if the Collector themselves weren't actually evil, and they just want to like get their own goal and like see what happens. Like it's possible, right, that Luz could convince the Collector to switch sides, right? Like that's definitely something that could happen. Which would be interesting. So yeah, this is all just really intriguing. I'm really like curious about the Collector. There's a lot that we still have to learn. Obviously, we know that the Collector also has some sort of relationship with the Owl Beast and like the curse and like what happened to Ida. So there's some sort of connection there too, right? That we just don't know what it is.
Again, like that kind of supports my idea of them being like an outsider kind of deal. They're throwing things into the world just to see what happens.
Yeah, totally, right?
Throwing powerful curses into the world just because, like, let's just see where it washes up, who picks it up, who uses it.
Yeah.
What happens there? I don't know. It'd be kind of interesting. I kind of like that idea, but I like Dishonored, so I'm biased.
Yeah, totally. May says, I'm guessing the Collector is maybe more likely chaotic evil. Yeah, so that could be true too. Like they could just also want to see destruction. Like we don't really know for sure. I feel like the Collector...
Maybe they just want a shrubbery.
Maybe they just want a nice garden, exactly. I feel like Collector is using Bellows to get a body. That could definitely be one of their motivations too. They're trying to get it like some sort of corporeal form of some kind. That would be interesting too. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting theories going around with the Collector right now, and I'm really intrigued. I feel like the show has done such a really great job of like planting these like little tiny seeds and like little tiny hints. We saw them in Ida's dream. We saw like them be referenced in Philip's memory, right? Like, so we get these little like teases of the Collector that to me like really up the curiosity for me, and I thought like it was just really brilliantly done in terms of writing of getting me to be really intrigued about this character. So kudos to the team.
I just really want to kick Bellows though. He's bad news. He's a real piece of shit.
Right. Yeah, he really is. So the Collector is like, I'm bored. Is the draining spell ready yet? So obviously this character is also very like childlike. Right. I want to play and see everything go all they say, right? And like they blow up and show this like breaking into pieces, and Bellows is like, you'll have your fun on the day of Unity. And this is kind of a funny line that we get from them too, right? So, but also interesting. So they say betrayed, beguiled, alone, deceived. And then of course they try to rhyme day of Unity, right? We'll have a revenge on the day of Unity, they say, right? So, but it's interesting that they seem to hint, right, about what the motivation of these two characters is, right? So we know that Bellows did feel betrayed by his brother, right? So the fact that the Collector is saying betrayed, beguiled, alone, deceived, will have a revenge on the day of Unity, right? So I don't know if like all of this is just like revenge for like the witches, revenge for like this betrayal that Bellows might have felt from his brother, right? So this is just an interesting. And did the collector get betrayed or deceived by someone and also wants revenge, right? So like it's interesting. It's interesting. I'm curious.
Revenge for Wanda. 50 points to anybody who can tell me what that's a reference to. Yeah. That the idea of the collector having been betrayed and, I don't know, perhaps banished or cast out to this other realm between planes of reality. That's also very outsider.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah, maybe the collector will possess someone, Zoe. That's a good theory. I'm led to believe that the collector is the one that gave the draining spell idea to Bellows too. Oh yeah, Shia, that's actually a really good theory because the collector, yeah, does reference the draining spell and the bright hues, and we know also that Philip needed the collector for his goal, right? Like at the end of the time pool episode when we saw Philip and the collector, he's like, oh, and you're gonna help me, right? So it's possible that he didn't even know about the draining spell before he met the collector, and then he needed that piece of information to, you know, complete his genocide essentially, right? So that's actually really good theory, Shia. I like that a lot.
Oh god. And when they're talking about the draining spell, obviously the form that the collector takes,
yeah,
it very obviously resembles the mushroom cloud for
yeah,
you know,
yeah, totally
deliberate reasons, no doubt.
Of course. So this is a memory also of Hunter, right? This is what happened at the end of Eclipse Lake, right? So he shows up. He just had his fight with Amity. He's covered in the abomination goo, right? And he's all scruffed up. He's saying, "I know you didn't want me going to Eclipse Lake, but I managed to find."
Bellows is just like a real
right?
hard ass about it.
Right. Yeah. And so at this point, I think Bellows, you know, he sees this key and he's like so desperate for it too, right? Like we saw him like trying to get the Titan blood from Eclipse Lake, from Kikimora and all that stuff, right? And so like it's clear that he's like very tunnel vision of like, I just need the Titan blood, right? And of course he's angry with Hunter, but I also think that he's not that angry with Hunter because all he cares about is that he got the Titan blood, right?
He's just, I mean, he's a Puritan, so
yes, exactly.
Being just like needlessly cruel to people is sort of part of the general thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, 100%, right? And then he tells Hunter to leave. Hunter leaves, and the collectors are like, "Ooh, I thought you were so mad. I thought you were gonna go all blah 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 blah," right? And then the collector actually transforms into like this shadowy Bellows silhouette, where we've seen Bellows like kind of do this thing before, right? When he was like punching the wall that one time with his like goo arm. So it's clear that like he kind of goes. We've all been there, right? We've all become a goo monster whenever we like lost our temper for a moment, right? Don't you ever like stub your toe and you like lose your temper for a moment and you like swear out loud and you turn into a goo monster? Like, hasn't that happened to all of us? Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the middle of trying to plan a genocide and then I'm stubbing my toe. That just
sends me, you know. That just sends
really
me.
grinds my gears.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So this is really twisted, right? So we really just get a confirmation here that Bellows is straight up manipulating Hunter, right? He admits, I say the Titan has big plans for you, and he does what he's told, right? So it's clear that that was just a line, right? It's total lie. The Titan doesn't have plans for Hunter or whatever, but it's clear that that's just the way that Bellows has used his you know, manipulative tactics to get Hunter to do what he wants. And then he even says here, right, unlike the previous attempts, and we're starting to put the pieces together that Hunter is indeed a clone, is indeed a copy, and we get this really sick and twisted interaction between the collector and Bellows here, right, where the collector's like, I'm starting to think you make those things just to destroy them. And then we get this like tiny smirk from Bellows when the collector's like, you have fun with it, admit it, right? And then Bellows has like this like, he does smile a little bit, right? And the collector's like laughing, and the the line that he's like, "Of course I don't collect her." Like it hurts every time he chooses to betray me, right? So it doesn't hurt for him to kill the Grimwalker. It hurts when
It
the
hurts for him to be
Grimwalker.
betrayed.
Exactly. So like I think Bellows does get some sort of sick enjoyment out of killing these Grimwalkers over and
He's
over
a
again, right?
Puritan.
Right, because like if he felt betrayed by his brother, if he killed his brother initially, if he's doing all of this as some sort of like revenge for what witches and what his brother did to him, then of course he's gonna get some sick twisted joy from killing his brother's clones over and over and over again, right? Like that, it's so messed up, but it's so twisted in like this way that just works for Belos's motivation and his character. It's like it's horrible. It's horrible, but it's so good. Like it's good within the story, but it's obviously so horrible.
Shia saying that smirk sent me. Did it turn you into a gooey monster?
Yeah, exactly. Did it fly you? Did it send you into a rage that sent you into a goo monster rage? But yeah, absolutely right. Um, it's definitely twisted. It's definitely sadistic, right? And this is where Hunter is finally starting to put the pieces together, right? And he's starting to get scared for what's going on here, and of course we see more of the background portraits, right? And I think the one that people have drawn a lot of attention to, and one of the most crucial ones, right, is the one of Philip looking into the knife, the zigzag ceremonial knife, and we see his bloodied reflection, right? Like he's got blood on his face. This is quite gruesome. And then we see the body, right, of Philip's
his brother/friend.
Brother/friend that's like on the ground in the fire, right? And it's very clear at this portrait that Philip did in fact murder his friend/brother, right?
We've all been there.
I'm not even gonna joke, and I will say no, I have not been there. If any of you have been there, you deserve to be in jail. I'm sorry. And we get this exchange, right, from Luz and Hunter, where it's like, hey, you don't need to return to the castle. You can stay at the owl house if you want, right? And it's clear that Hunter just doesn't know what to do at this point, right? He doesn't know what to believe. He doesn't know who to trust.
Pidge's saying real 40s Germans vibes from Belos. Hunter isn't good enough. Next one will be better, more pure. You're right, but I hate to tell you this. I don't know where you're from in the world, but the founding fathers of America, they were pretty hot on that whole idea of racial purity.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
They're pretty hot on that idea. Like, you know, the Germans may have popularized it in the 1940s, but you know, birth of a nation. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, totally. You know, I think that there's a lot of historical parallels that you could draw here, right? Like obviously we can draw some parallels between the fascist rule of Germany in the 40s. We can draw a lot of parallels between the colonization of the American colonies, you know, in the 1600s. I think like that's
the main one. Like, I mean, as soon as like fascism comes into the question, it will immediately ignite,
of course,
thoughts of the Second World War. But I will say this: when America chose to break its position of what's the word? When America joined the war, Germany were thoroughly surprised, right? Because they were under the impression that America were like totally down for this crap, right?
Right.
In fact, the famous Nazi propaganda film called Triumph of the Wills was heavily inspired by the American propaganda film. I'm of course referring to D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation.
Right. Totally.
So, you know, America, this is like Bellows and Witterbane, and I'm going to get into this. It's all distinctly Anglo-American.
Yeah, totally.
It's very distinctly Anglo-American. It's very deliberately Anglo-American, which I will expand on later.
Totally, totally. And then we get this next really horrifying reveal, right? Like this shot of like this all of these memories, right? And we see these broken staffs on the ground. Like these are clearly the broken technological staffs, you know, that we've seen
Yeah.
Hunter use before. And then of course all the Golden Guard masks. And what's interesting is like they all look slightly different, right? Like they're all slightly different shapes. The eye holes are like slightly different shapes, but they're all broken and cracked on the ground, right? To indicate the tragic events of what happened with these previous Golden Guards, right? So like there's the painting of like the statue, there's a painting of, there's a couple of them that might be the creation slash destruction of some of these Golden Guards, right? And the one in the back I think is particularly just horrifyingly creepy, right? Because it looks to be like body parts are just kind of like strewn around, and like that's really
Yeah.
creepy. That's really, really creepy. um so yeah, this was horrifying, right? And obviously
They really pushed what they could to get past Disney censors. There's some really dark
yeah,
implicit content
they really
in
went
this
hard.
episode.
Yeah, absolutely. um and you know, obviously this kind of starts this panic in Hunter, right? And we see the inner Bellows show up and try to start the flame with the mask. And we know now that this is obviously the inner Bellows trying to take down the Palisman souls, right? And once again we see the portraits in the background of Bellows fighting and killing his brother and running away from some witch, right?
Here's my question though.
Yeah.
Why is the inner Bellows guiding them through these memories?
That is a good question. Well, we know that the inner Bellows has been trying to take down this Palisman monster for a while and has used this opportunity of Luce and Hunter being there to distract and take down this monster. So I feel like maybe the inner Bellows wasn't really thinking about the consequences of like these two seeing the memories, and more so just trying to take down this Palisman monster, if that makes sense.
To be honest, I also feel like he was trying to take care of them too.
Which obviously could be a part, right? Like we know that Bellows does see Hunter as expendable, so he could just be trying to take them down too. And we know that at this point too that, or it's possible that Luce was not expendable up until this point, right? Like we know that at the end of season 1, Bellows probably could have taken out Luce. But didn't, right? And we know now that Bellows did need Luce to go back in time to, you know, teach Philip the glyph, right? So I wonder if
I guess what you could say was he was playing fast and loose with fate.
Maybe.
But I said fast and loose with fate.
Anyway, but we know now that obviously Luce has done the time pull thing at this point. So maybe at this point, Bellows does see her as expendable once she has fulfilled her role, right? So interesting, just something to think about. I'm ignoring your joke.
You can't ignore my joke. It happened. Accept it.
Yeah. Or yeah, and it could also be that what they just said in the chat, that Bellows just didn't care that he was showing the memories because he was confident, right?
Sorry. Shia just sent me a message saying, I couldn't connect the joke in a meaningful way, but I wanted to crack a joke about the masks being related to every time you were cancelled in stream, and I keep coming back stronger.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, totally.
I couldn't think of a way to connect the joke either. So I just read the message.
Oh my gosh. So we get this
They liked my joke.
Yes, a couple people enjoyed your joke. I hope you're happy. So we see the Palisman monster, right? And now it's really becoming clear to us what this monster is, right? We see these little animals and their eyeballs kind of poking out, right? And I mentioned this to you off stream, but this also gave me Full Metal Alchemist vibes, right? Like this really reminded me of that scene where Ed and Envy are trapped in Gluttony's stomach, and Envy turns into, you know, his true form, and he's like this, you know, philosopher's stone that has all these like souls in him, right? So like that big beastie form of Envy really reminded me of like this talisman monster. So again, just wouldn't surprise me if there was some inspiration there. And we even see, right? We even see like Hunter interact with one of these talismans, right? So anyway, this reveal happens, right, where Hunter's like, we weren't running from the Inner Bellows, we were with him the whole time, right? And of course it's confirmed to us now that this little kid, right, is in fact the true Inner Bellows. And the Inner Bellows uses like this trap that they've set up, right, to take down the talisman monster, and fling these potions, fling these arrows, tie it up into this trap, right? And the poor talisman monster is like flailing as it's trying to like get free. And as we see this kid Bellows transform into modern day Bellows, right, we see a few more interesting portraits in the background. This one on the left seems to be an early version of Philip drinking up that talisman juice, right? He's thirsty for that juice, and he's drinking it up. And then we also see this portrait of Philip wearing the Bellows mask for the first time. So his kind of like confirmation, his like transformation into Bellows seems to have come into play here. And then we see this other portrait of the knife and Bellos's arm with like the glyphs that we saw, you know, in the previous episode.
Yeah, that he's like etched into his own skin.
Yeah, so it seems to be that he actually carved this glyph into him, right? Which is
the one that I found really interesting is that there's one portrait of him like looking into a mirror over what looks like a basin.
Yes, that's the
and he's got one of he's got one of his hands over, and it kind of makes me wonder if that's the moment when he cut his ears.
That's what I thought it was too. Yeah.
I don't know. I zoned out for a second there. I don't know if you already brought that up.
No,
Did you bring that up?
That's actually the next portrait that I was literally just about to say that. So this last portrait, right, we see Bellows, he's kind of like shadowed out, and he's like holding his face, and we see the knife and this basin and stuff like that. And so yeah, I interpreted that as the moment of him cutting his ears, you know, his transformation. These four portraits just seem to indicate the transformation of Philip into Bellows, right?
The four portraits of the apocalypse.
Yeah, and then of course it's coupled with this visual of the Inner Bellows transforming from his kid version into his present day version, right? And this was really harrowing for me when he like said their names, right? When he was like, "Hello, Hunter. Hello, Luz." Right? Like he's truly terrifying. He's truly very scary. In like this very creepy real way, right? Like he's not this horrific monster, he's not this like evil giant towering Newt King in the way that Andrea says, right? He's just a dude. He's a very creepy, power hungry, willing to do whatever he wants dude. And like there's a realness to that, right? That makes it even more unsettling.
He's a figurehead of the church.
Exactly.
So you know, that's kind of a given.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. So Bellows, you know, ends up explaining that this talisman monster has been a thorn in his side. All these weepy talisman souls, their voices constantly nagging me, right? So it's interesting the way that these talisman were still very much like somewhat alive within him. Which again reminds me of Fullmetal Alchemist, right?
He's killing their physical form, but absorbing their souls.
Yeah. And then interesting, right, that Bellows pulls out the soul of this bird, and this looks to be the bird that Hunter picked up earlier in the episode, right? Like at very least it's a very similar bird, but the fact that it's a bird is still important, right? Again, Hunter connecting what Bellows is doing to this bird here, right, as he turns his arm into goo and he crushes it, right? And we only see the silhouette of what happened there, but of course Hunter is witnessing this and seeing the shadow of it in Hunter's eyes as he's like watching this horrific thing happen. Of course Hunter is thinking of Flapjack, right? Like really just cementing how horrible Bellows is, and like how Hunter is finally realizing that, right?
Indeed.
Just so well done. You know,
It's I that line about like can't reason with crazy, that the use of the word crazy is interesting.
yeah.
Because it conjures up thoughts of heresy, right?
We'll get to that line.
Heresy.
We'll get to that line.
Um,
But we have to acknowledge this first, where Hunter asks, right, what did you do to the other guards? To our family, it wasn't wild magic, was it? Right. So he's finally put the pieces together. He finally has realized that Bellows was the one who was taking out the previous guards, taking out his family, right? It wasn't wild magic, was it? Hunter finally confronts him, and this reveal, right? This was so heartbreaking, and this was such a gut punch, right? When Bellows is like, what a shame, as he flicks Hunter's hair, and he has this line that basically confirms it to us. Out of all the Grimwalkers, you look the most like him, right? So there it is, plain as day. Hunter is a Grimwalker, confirmed.
and he's of course referring to Bob Hoskins.
Of course.
He's been desperately trying to capture Bob Hoskins' likeness all this time, and he just never could. He's like, something.
Not quite. Yeah.
I'm not an artist, all right? Like, I can remember his face, but like, I haven't seen a photo of him in years.
Yeah.
So like, it's just the nose is what I keep getting wrong.
Right.
Everything else, but it's just the nose.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so he decides that Hunter, now that he's betrayed him, Hunter is now expendable, right? So we see this interesting thing happening where Bellows is like, opening the ground below him essentially, and Hunter is like falling into the ground. Luz pulls off her jacket and uses it to try to save Hunter, to try to prevent him from falling into this. And this was a really scary, harrowing sequence, right? Where Luz is like, no, you're gonna be okay, right? Just hang on. And then we see Hunter like desperately trying to cling onto this jacket as he's being dragged down into the ground, and like he's not able to save himself, and the jacket goes under, and Luz is like horrified, right? Just really scary, really, really scary. And I also just have to give kudos to both the voice actors in this scene. Like, they did such a stellar job. This whole sequence is just brilliantly performed.
And somewhat horrifying.
Yes, definitely. Bello saying, like, I was expecting him to last longer than the others, right? So again, indicating to us that the Golden Guards have continually figured this out and betrayed him, right, over and over again. Luz in tears saying, I'm gonna tell everyone about the Day of Unity, that you've been lying about the Titan. I have a feeling it's not gonna be that easy for Luz, right? Like, she still doesn't really have solid proof other than the fact that she has seen these memories, and you can't really convince people with just like, trust me, I saw that, right? So I feel like Luz is gonna have a hard time convincing these people.
Is it possible to award Francisco winner of the stream 2 times in the same stream for the comment, meet the new Golden Guard gatherer?
Oh my gosh, yeah, right. Hunter and gatherer. Jeez, y'all are silly.
Hyrule, when you say that the worst part of the episode is that Hunter survives this, do you mean that the worst part is that he survives it to be traumatized by it, or do you mean that you wanted Hunter to die? Please clarify.
Yes, please clarify that. But yeah, totally, May. The voice acting was amazing in this whole scene, both from Hunter and Luz, both of their Zena Robinson and Nicole.
We never give credit to the guy who voices Bellows, who's
he does a great job too. Yeah. Really, we
never give that poor guy any credit.
No, he does a great job of just being a total chilling, horrifying asshole. Like, really, really, really stellar performances from the entire cast in this episode. So Bellows says this line here, right? No one ever said it was easy being a witch hunter. So it is like confirmed now what Bellos's true goals really are, what his true motivations really are. He wants to commit genocide, right? He wants to kill all the witches.
Okay, so this is where we get into the meat and potatoes.
Yes.
Of the episode. Do you mind if we just dig in?
Yes, let's dig in. Let's get into it.
Let's dig in. Okay, so Now, earlier I mentioned a figure called the Witch Finder General, who was a real person who existed sort of circa 1640, 1660, which is exactly the same period when Witterbane was active. Now, the Witchfinder General is, I believe, one of the main inspirations for the character of Bellows, and something that um, I feel like an idiot for not noticing sooner because it's actually really clear when you think about it. Now, the Witchfinder General basically was a Puritan, a devout Christian, but also an opportunist who took advantage of the witch hunting craze of the time and basically made a few claims, a few bizarre claims. You know, there's records of claims that they could communicate with God. Stop me
Right.
if you've heard that one. You know,
Exactly,
which of
exactly.
course is reflected in Belos's quote unquote ability to communicate with the Titan.
Right.
And thus, the Witchfinder General would make this very lofty claim that they had been given this power, this like divine power, this divine right, this divine ability uh, to um, to locate witches, right?
Right.
To locate heretics and locate witches. They had a power, like an inbuilt compass of sorts.
Right.
But they were first and foremost a charlatan. They were a charlatan. They were a swindler, and they were just an opportunist, right? But that, when we place that against the context of what we know about Bellows, Bellows obviously that, being a witch hunter, that's not like witch hunter in like a fantasy sense, in like a fictional sense.
Right.
That was a real thing that people did in history, and he is
Absolutely.
like, and that gives him like a real edge to this character that makes him all the more horrifying. And I'm so glad they did it because it
Yeah.
very, very soundly grounds his character in Puritan Christian religion.
100%.
You know,
100%.
which raises some very interesting questions about how he got here, right?
Right.
Because I believe he meant to be here. I believe that him being here was at the very least the byproduct of an investigation, right? Because that's the
Right.
thing, right? Witch hunters, like the Witchfinder General, were primarily first and foremost investigators, right?
Right.
They would investigate claims, they would investigate activity, sort of like really, really nasty Pinkertons, as if Pinkertons weren't already pretty horrible.
Right.
But
Yeah.
although I don't think the Pinkertons were active at that time, but they were first and foremost investigators. They would work for the court, they would work for judicial bodies, they were investigators, right?
Right.
So my pet theory is that Bellows, Witterbane, somehow was, in his investigations, discovered the Boiling Isles. Like the Boiling Isles is something he had whispers of or writings of, and in his investigations, it took him to this world. And what does a witch hunter do when they end up in a world full of witches?
Right.
They cull them because that's their job, right? And these people truly, truly believe what they're doing is right.
Right.
And
Exactly.
they witchcraft and like anything like that is passed off as heresy, right? Which really, that's the significance of that line. You can't reason with crazy, and it
Yeah.
adds another edge to that line. Those witches. The
Mm-hmm.
way he says it with such
Mm-hmm.
venom, such vitriol. Now, all of this is to say, like all the behavior we see with him, like he presenting himself to the public as a prophetic figure, and those scenes we see earlier in the episode of him presenting himself to the public all those years ago, again as like some form of prophetic figure, or like as a prophet, right? It's like
Right.
a form of religious prophet, is
Definitely.
distinctly Abrahamic in nature.
Definitely.
Um,
Definitely.
Now, the reason I'm still saying Abrahamic here instead of just Christian is because I honestly feel like there's actually at least a little sprinkling of Joseph Smith in there too. I feel like, especially with the hair, like the tied
Right.
back hair, and that Joseph Smith look. I feel like there's just a sprinkling of Joseph Smith in there because obviously Joseph Smith um, uh, was, he makes a comment about having been kicked out of various towns and having to change his name. Joseph Smith was a convicted con man.
Mm, mm.
Uh, who was, arrested and kicked out of various towns at various points in his life,
Right.
and eventually would create the Church of the Latter-day Saints, or
Mm,
as we know
mm,
them, the Mormons. He was the
mm.
founder of the Mormon faith, and he was a swindler. He was literally a convicted con man. He fabricated this whole crap as basically as a way of legitimizing his white supremacy. The stuff about like the Nephites and all that crap, and the stuff about like black people having been cursed by God, and thus they carry the inherent sin in all of them, like just awful
Right.
stuff.
Right. Totally.
Just using his capacity as a swindler to functionally fool people into hatred, right?
Yeah.
Which is what we see Bellows doing when he's
Definitely. Definitely.
standing there, basically putting on a play. You know, it's it gives they never say the word Christian, they never say the word God, they
Of
never say the
course.
word Lord, they never, whereas a character like Oliver Cromwell in Wolfwalkers, they have the liberty to have him explicitly praying to the Christian God, and
Right.
like Disney's never going to do that.
Right. Of course.
But they've done basically everything they can to make this extremely, extremely clear, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And these witch hunters, being Puritan, they were literally the founding fathers of America were Puritans who'd run away from England because they were the worst English people in England.
Right.
They were literally the worst English people in England. This was around the same period as Cromwell's New Model Army, and Cromwell's popularity in the UK was extremely low. Like he was an extremely unpopular man, and the Puritans are extremely unpopular because they were just these like ruthless, unemotional, cruel bastards.
Yeah.
And that's
totally.
what we see here. We see this man who's so convicted in his faith, like it really, like it's so. He's just a witch hunter.
Yep.
And he's going to kill all of them if he can.
Yep.
And he's driven to do that. And that's horrifying. And like them making him a witch hunter is so interesting to me.
Yeah.
And so historical and really grounds this villain. Like we knew that there, at first it kind of felt like the stuff with them setting Luz's home in Connecticut. Felt like it was just kind of like set dressing, because it's like, oh, that's cool. Anybody who knows the history of Connecticut knows about the witch trials, and
also Dana is from Connecticut, and it's like
Dana's
there's a personal tie there. Yeah,
it's like, oh, it felt like set dressing at first. Like, oh, this is a show about witches, so it makes sense that they'd throw in a little Easter egg about the witch trial. No,
but it's very grounded. Yeah,
no, this guy's a witch hunter. Like
100%. Yeah.
And but it's so strange, isn't it? Like for him, it's more than just like in the Boiling Isles, it's opportunism. He's the opportunism of many of these witch hunters is here reflected in his behavior as a foreigner in the Boiling Isles.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But as a witch hunter, it's more than just opportunism. Like he actually really, in a very convicted way, hates these people and wants them all to die.
Yes. Yes.
That's
definitely
so. God.
and I have to once again draw those parallels to the real world history, right? Like this is not like Dana, like I said, Dana based this off of like her real history too, right? Like she's from Connecticut, and of course like there is a lot of real history that went on there, right? Like you said, with the witch trials, with this like Puritan witch hunt that essentially went on. But like that's essentially what happened, right, to the native people who were already living in those colonies, right? Like they were literally murdered, and like they committed genocide against these people, and it's like it's so reflective of like this real history.
Yes.
And I really love that. I really feel like Dana had a lot of balls, right, to put that in her Disney show. And I really have to give her credit for basically making this as explicit as she could, right? Like obviously it's not the same as Wolfwalkers. Wolfwalkers
Wolfwalkers is an indie film. They're not bound by those same kind of
exactly. And Dana basically doing as much as she could to make it as explicit as possible, which is really, I have to give her credit for that.
But I love it because it's rewarding to people like me who know this stuff.
Totally, yeah.
It's very rewarding. It makes me love a show more when it's, and there's a similar aspect of that with Wolfwalkers, really. But like, just like with Wolf Walkers, the Christians generally, it's not just the Puritans, and like in
Right.
this particular period of history, we're talking about the Puritans, but the Christians have a long history of going into other cultures where there are other religions that are not their own,
Right.
and decrying them as heresy, decrying them as lunacy, decrying them as paganism, decrying them as
Witchcraft.
witches,
Yeah, exactly.
and killing them all.
Exactly. Exactly. So I love how grounded this is in reality. I love the parallels to real world history. I again, Dana just had a lot of guts to do this, and I want to give her just so much credit for making this as explicit as she possibly could. Um, yeah, totally agree with all of you in the chat here. The divine light was an interesting idea for this, and there's a lot of colonial parallels, right? Colonization parallels, playing the long game for sure, absolutely. um so yeah, he says like witch hunter, right? He says this line like, no one said being a witch hunter was easy, and Zoe had this comment here too, right, where you name your clone of the dead brother Hunter, right? And I feel like that's so telling as well, right? Like obviously I think it's implied that the original brother is probably not named Hunter, but this idea of like witch hunter being introduced, right? Like I think Bellows named his Grimwalkers Hunter because like that's what he wanted his brother to be, right? Like he wanted his brother to be this witch hunter alongside of him, and that's him kind of like putting this label on this person he's created, right, to try to mold them into who he wants them to be, which I think is also really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's all there are just layers upon layers. Like such a simple statement just adds layers upon layers of meaning.
Yeah, definitely, which is just again a testament to the brilliant writing of this show. Luce has this line here too, right? Which, as we know, is particularly painful. So all this time, people have been mindlessly helping a witch hunter. How could they be fooled so easily, right? And this is painful. This is painful when Bellows is like, I would not be so judgmental if I were you, right? And then, of course, he pulls up this frame and we see the clips from the previous episode, right? We see these memories. We see these memories of young Philip and poor Luce, right? Just again, kudos to the voice acting and the animating of this scene, right? Like seeing this, like seeing Luce have this realization and like it essentially sending her into a panic is so heartbreaking to watch. But we knew this was coming, right? Like we knew that Luce was going to figure this out eventually, but the way that she figures it out is just so gut wrenching. And yeah, the voice acting, her saying like no, and you're just Phil, or like you're just Bellows, right? Like, God, it was so heartbreaking. It hit me so hard, and I was just like, oh God, Luce, you poor thing.
I I kind of found the scene a little goofy. Because like it's so obvious it's him. Like we've all known it's been him for this whole
I
time.
know.
And it's played off like the scene is kind of delivered sort of like the I mean, when I mentioned it to you, I mentioned Fight Club, the whole
Oh right, yeah,
where he's like, but at least in Fight Club, he's like, dude, it's so obvious. Like, how have you not figured this out?
yeah,
And he's like, just say it. We're the same person.
right.
That's right. Or like it did also kind of remind me of the scene from Twilight, like, say it, you're a vampire. Like it was just a little goofy.
Yeah.
To me, that the witch hunter reveal was more important to me than Bellows and Witterbane being the same person.
Right.
Just because we've known this for ages.
We've known this, but like it's hard watching Luce come to this realization, right? Because we know Luce is a character that blames herself. She tends to blame herself a lot, and I feel like that's going to be a crucial piece of like her arc going forward, right? So it is heartbreaking to see this reveal.
You could say she's really losing it.
Yeah. And then she says, I can't say your name, right? And then of course the echoes of her past self, saying you're Philip Wittevane. I can't believe I taught Philip something new. Got to talk to Philip, right? It's just really it's heartbreaking. And then Luce having this realization is heartbreaking. And yeah, this definitely shattered my heart. And yeah, it was really, I enjoyed it a lot. It might have been a little goofy to some people who thought of Twilight, but I enjoyed it a lot. Meanwhile,
it wasn't the Twilight connection that made it goofy to me. It's the fact that
we've known it already for so long.
It's the fact that we've known it already.
Yeah,
so I feel like them playing it off as this big reveal Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know. It
I get
didn't
where you're coming
like
from.
by no means did it spoil my enjoyment of the
No,
episode, even
yeah,
a little.
I get where you're coming from. In the meantime, or sorry, not Luz, Ida and King and Hootie are, and Flapjack, of course, right, are meanwhile trying to get this potion figured out. Bones, Dirt, and Muck, I don't have time to fail, right? Ida's obviously very much panicking. And she's not able to create the potion properly without her magic, right? Like she actually created the potion when we did the Willow episode, right?
Yeah,
When we did all that, but she had her magic at that point, so she was able to do it easily. At this
doing
point,
this
she's
without that magic is hard.
exactly. You need the little magic flute playing, and you need the abomination goo to make this work, right? As we saw at the beginning of the
It's
episode.
great, and they come in and they save the day. Rooster, I just want to acknowledge a comment in the chat. Rooster saying, "Feel like we're past having a purely good ending at this point. Things are really bad for everyone in the show right now." I
Yeah.
kind of, I agree and disagree. I think I agree in as much as I don't think Dana is the kind of storyteller to want to give us a purely happy ending.
Right.
But I don't think we're not going to get a happy ending. This is still a kid show published by Disney, right? And something else you need to keep in mind is we're at the end of the second act. This is like the end of the second act, right? In terms of the scope of the story.
Right.
We get 3 seasons, one of them shorter. This is functionally the end of the second act, right? Which is the low point for the characters in the story. That's how the 3-act structure works. And you know, be damned if the 3-act structure isn't just a thing that everybody does because it works.
Right.
So I wouldn't count your chickens right now. Like we're at the end of the second act functionally.
Don't count your roosters.
Don't count your roosters, Rooster Tamer. We're at the end of the second act, which means this is the point in the story where things like think about it with Avatar, right? Avatar's the same. You get to the end of the second season, it's like, wow, we really beefed that.
Right, exactly. They're at their low point. Exactly.
We really beefed that up. That was a mess. Like the whole point of that part of the story is to make things feel like they're at their worst and that things are irredeemable. But then there's the glimmer of hope. Things turn around, and that moment will be coming soon. Maybe not this season. Maybe not this season. I don't know, but like that. Yeah, don't count your roosters.
Yes, exactly. This was another little Hootie gag that we got for a little bit of levity this episode, right? They have an interruption, and we get this fun zoom in on Hootie with the sunglasses, being like, "I'll handle this," right? Like he's like the bouncer of the owl house. So just some fun Hootie gags to give us some levity. With King saying like, "Please tell me it's gonna be okay," and Ida like not being able to answer. Like that's pretty heartbreaking, right? Ida obviously desperate to save Luz, but not knowing how, right? And then, of course, the way that Rain knows how to get past Hootie is just by saying, "I'm a secret admirer, here's some flowers," which I thought was quite funny, right? And of
Rain
course,
knows that Hootie is a matchmaker.
Yeah, Rain knows that Hootie is a romantic at the end of the day, right? Oh my gosh. So yeah, Hootie shows up and is like, "Special delivery from a secret admirer." And of course Ida is like, "That could be booby trapped, like get it out of here." But then the spell kind of like activates, right? And then we get the potion, and Ida is of course happy, but she's also like, who the heck dropped this off, right? And as she's looking out the window, we kind of see the hooded figure running off in the distance. We don't really know who it is, but I think Ida, I think it's safe to say that Ida has some suspicions at this point, right? Like she might not know that it's Rain specifically, but like obviously she knows like she has an ally somewhere out there, right? So I feel like Ida will soon figure out that Rain is okay, and we'll get that plot going soon as well too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to that too.
Yeah.
Rain is great. I'm so hyped for Rain.
Yeah, me too.
Hyrule, I noticed that you never clarified whether you wanted Hunter to die. And I'm gonna have to press you for an answer. I really need to know. Like, I know you're anti-Lilith, but like, give this poor kid a break. Please.
Yeah. Yeah, so Ida reads the note and says that it still needs a power source, right, and a big one. And this is This is where like we really find out that we're at the low point of the story, right? Because we do have the Titan blood to get back home, but now we have to use the last of it, right? So King says we have to use the Titan blood. Ida is a little hesitant at first, right? She's like, this is the last of it, and she needs to get back home. And then of course King arguing, right? Like she won't ever get back home if she's trapped there, right? Like we need to get her out of there and here first, right? And of course that makes a lot of sense. And of course, Ida is desperate to get her out and decides, yes, this is our only choice at this point, right? So she does end up using the last of the Titan blood.
Why didn't they just use a regular old 6-volt battery instead?
Why couldn't Ida have pulled out the bathtub and like how they did for the door at the other episode and used that as a power source? But no, I understand that that desperate times call for desperate measures, and so of course they had to use the last of the Titan blood here, right? And that really does put Luz in a really tricky position at the end of this episode, right? So they try to contact Luz. Luz, are you there? Ida's trying to contact her through the walkie-talkie, but of course Luz is preoccupied, right, trying to confront the inner Bellos, and she has left the walkie-talkie on the ground, which is quite dramatic, right, as we see it like in the foreground. And like just Bellows being creepy, just it does feel good to hear my name or whatever, right? And I had to change when Philip, was run out of too many towns, right? Which again is that connection to he said John Smith, right?
Joseph Smith.
Joseph Smith, that's what it was. Yeah. So there's like a little bit of that connection there too, right? And Bellows saying like, I told you once before, Lazura, right? Like just being abundantly clear that he has been one step ahead of her this entire time, like. He knew who she was, in the past, and he's figured it out, and he knows who she is now, right? Just like really making it clear that he knows more than she thought he knew, right? And then she asks him, right? Like, what is a Grimwalker? What about Hunter, right? Like, I appreciate that Luce is thinking about Hunter, right, in this moment, right? Like, it really just kind of goes to show,
yeah,
how caring she is and like how much she actually does genuinely care about Hunter, right?
Yeah.
He's a better version of an old friend, right? So here's that confirmation again that we get from Bellows, but thanks to you, I'll have to make another one, right? So he's making Grimwalkers of his old friend, quote unquote, most likely his brother, a better version as well, right? So again, like it seems to be implied that Philip's brother / friend betrayed Philip in figuring out that witches were not actually evil or whatever, and of course Philip took that the wrong way and wanted revenge for that, right? And is creating these versions of his brother, these idealized versions of his brother that he can fully control and manipulate and be what he wants him to be. It's twisted. It's definitely twisted.
God, his kind of breakdown at the end of the episode, Hunter's breakdown at the end of the episode is just devastating to watch.
Yeah, for sure. Luz asking, why are you doing this? And Bellows saying, I'll do anything to save humanity from evil, right? While he's holding this mask. And Luz saying, like, you're the evil one, right? And this line,
she pulls her "No You" card.
Yeah, you're evil, and Bellows saying, "Can't reason with crazy," right? And I really love this line from Bellows because even though it is kind of funny, right? Like he's like, "Oh, can't reason with crazy," like it is kind of funny, but it also just really hammers home, right? Like his perspective and like how he is so stubborn in his view of what's righteous and like what's good and what's evil, and his like view about witches and witchcraft and like this idea that they're evil and deserve to die, right? Like he so firmly believes that, and like he's so unwilling to question that even when his friend / brother was trying to show him otherwise, right? And someone in the chat mentioned that it reminded them of the villain from Kipo in the Age of Wonder Beasts who also killed her brother. And yeah, it was definitely similar to that, right? Where it's like
I have not finished Kipo in the Age of Wonder Beasts, by the way.
Well, spoiler. But yeah, it really is that idea, right? That like your your values, your idea of righteousness is so unwavering that like you're willing to take out even someone that you supposedly love, right? For the sake of your cause, and that's really real, right? Like a lot of villains in history do this, and it's very telling, right? When Belos is like, "You can't reason with crazy." Like, it's very telling how he sees himself and how he sees his goals, and um, he's how he sees Luz, right? He sees Luz as this obstacle to like keeping him from his goals, and she's misguided, she's crazy, right? And same as his
Mm.
brother or whatever, right? And so yeah, I really
But
liked this line from Belos.
he's right though. There is no reasoning with crazy. That's exactly why they can't reason with him. That's exactly why
Exactly.
he's got to go.
Exactly. And I love that kind of like added irony too, right? Of like, yeah, Luz can't reason with crazy either. Luz can't reason with him. And yeah, really it's interesting how it's interesting the similarities, but also the differences between like Owl House and Amphibia, right? Last week in Amphibia, we got this very compelling and like heartbreaking backstory about Andreas, about like his motivations and where he's coming from. And we're kind of like, oh, is Andreas going to change his mind? Is he going to have not a redemption, but some kind of like change of heart, right? Towards the end of the show, we kind of understand like where these ideas came from with Andreas, and we're starting to start to see him question those things. But with Belos, right, he's just so firmly steadfast in his views that he's like willing to do whatever it takes, right? And I really love like that difference between them, but it does add this added chilling vibe to Belos, right? That just makes him all the more creepy.
What is the voice actor's name?
Oh yeah, yeah. Kudos to
Matthew Rhys Evans, who is quite a well-known. I think he's Welsh. Um, I think he's a Welsh. He's a character. He's quite a well-known British character actor. He's really good.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and he's really good in this. He really sells it.
yeah.
And he really just like laps up every line.
Yeah, he does a really, really great job. He does a really great job. So yeah, exactly. May says, I will say the delivery on Can't Reason with Crazy was well done because he is just done and like, oh well, right? Like it's not even malicious the way he says it. He's just like, oh, Can't Reason with Crazy. Better take this girl out, right? But yeah. But what's really awesome, right, as Belos attacks Luz, Hunter does end up coming back, and he uses the glyphs, right? He uses like this ice and plant glyph to create this wall to protect Luz from Belos, right? And this is actually the first time too that we hear Hunter say Luz's name. I think someone pointed out that Hunter has only ever referred to her as human before, right? But now he's actually calling her Luz, which is really huge, right?
Yeah.
So Hunter ends up protecting her, and she uses the glyph to burn a hole and run away and escape. And we get this like moment, right? This really chilling moment where Hunter and Belos make eye contact as they're escaping, right? So, it's clear to me that they both know, right? Like Hunter knows what Belos's true nature is, and Belos knows that Hunter knows what his true nature is. And so, this kind of leads to the realization that Hunter has, at the end of the episode. But yeah, this moment is really harrowing. And of course, they end up grabbing the walkie-talkie, and at the last second, right, end up being able to escape the mindscape. And yeah, the dramatic tension was obviously very high and really well done. Really set the stakes and the tension for the story really well. As they appear back in the owl house, right? Of course, King and Hootie want to get on them, but Ida, being the mother figure in this situation, is like, don't crowd them, give them space. Are you two okay? Right? Give them time to breathe, right? And then we see this horrified look from Luz and this look from Hunter too, and of course, Flapjack is happy to have Hunter back. And yeah, Hunter straight up has just a panic attack, right? There's like no ifs and or buts about this. He straight up has a panic attack. He says he knows we were in there. I can't go back, right? And I know that like some people were kind of like worried about like, oh, is Hunter like still going to try to go back to Bellows? Is he still going to try to like come up with some logic to justify Bellows and go back to him? Is he still going to, is he going to fear that? Or I saw some person telling me that like they thought, oh, maybe Hunter will think that if I just follow all of his rules, I'll be okay. But I think at this point, Hunter realizes that no matter what he does, he is not okay, right?
Yeah.
So and this line where he says, I can't go back, I think really, really, really shows us that Hunter has learned the truth at this point about Bellows, right? His mind is officially changed about Bellows. He no longer sees Bellows as this like good intentioned, oh, he's just here to help people, oh, this is just for the greater good kind of person, but now he really sees the true side of Bellows, right? And I really don't think that Hunter will try to get Bellows's like praise again at this point.
God, I hope not.
I really, yeah, I hope not. Yeah, so I know a lot of people have been, and interesting here too that he throws the cape, right? So this indicates a couple things to me, right? Him actually discarding Bellows, right? And what and the importance of what Bellows thinks of him, right? So I feel like the discarding of the cape is Hunter getting rid of that, but also like the expectations of Bellows, right? That's all kind of represented in this cape. He's like shedding that as well. But I also think what's interesting to note is the cape also has that sigil on it, right? It has that bird, the Golden Guard sigil, which we also recognize to be from Luz's hometown. So I think it's interesting here that Hunter leaves that behind. I wonder if Luz will pick it up and connect the dots in a later episode.
Yeah, because he leaves it behind. Dang.
Right. Yeah. So I'm curious if that's going to play a part.
Yeah, God, that's weird. Maybe she'll be looking like scrolling through photos on our phone or something and be like, hang on a minute.
Right, yeah, like, oh, this looks familiar.
God, that's God, yeah, that's interesting. I'm really pumped for where this is going next.
Yeah, me too.
Hard to even fathom where we go from here.
Yeah. And then Hunter runs off, right? We don't know where he's going, right? So I know Zoe, you say it's likely Hunter's going to Willow's house. I don't think so. I don't know. I don't know. There's some possibilities.
Does he even know where she lives? Like,
right. We don't know. So we don't know where he's going. We don't know who's gonna help him. Could it be Willow? Could it be Darius? I would love to see Darius come back in some way.
There are certain interactions I'd like to see.
Right.
Is all I can say about this, right?
Yes.
It's got to be Clawthorn. I mean, like, Darius is great, and I want to see more Hunter and Darius, but there has to be more Clawthorn interaction because,
yeah, totally.
I feel like we're pretty sure at this point that he is, even as a Grimwalker, he has some like Clawthorn blood in him.
Right.
And like, Lilith hated him, and I want to see Lilith kind of patch things up with this poor kid, and I want to see them connect.
Yeah.
I want to see them connect on the level of being abuse survivors, right? Of the same man, you know.
Exactly.
I want Steve to switch sides.
Yes, can we get Steve? And oh yes, Hunter is running to Steve and being like, Steve, I do regret my choices.
And then they go and find Lilith, and it's all great. And
it's all great from there. Yes. So yeah, he's not running to Willow, not running to Darius. He's running to Steve.
It's primarily, I gotta say, it's primarily Ida and Lilith that I want to see. Even with that, I love Darius.
Yeah.
I love him to bits. I gotta say, on another note, I don't think Darius is surviving this show. I think if there's any character who's gonna bite it, and I hate saying this because Darius is so hot. I hate saying this. He's so hot.
He's too hot to survive the show.
he's very cool. He's an excellently written character.
Yeah.
Given how little screen time he has. You know, he's really left a lasting impression on people.
Definitely.
I just don't think he's going to survive. Rain, they're not going to kill Rain, right?
They're not going to kill Rain.
They're not going to kill Rain. Rain has a thing with Ida.
They're not going to kill any of the kids. I'm pretty confident in saying they're not going to kill any of the kids.
Like this isn't Infinity Train, okay?
Right.
Where they could just disintegrate a kid, like the ending of
Book three, yeah.
what is it? Indiana Jones and the Last
Right,
Crusade.
yeah, totally.
Um, you know, just like Simon disintegrating, and then they see the Iron Cross in the pile of ashes, and they're like, "Wait a minute,
Yeah.
what?"
Yeah.
But like these other peripheral characters, Eberwolf and Darius, they're marked.
Yeah,
I don't.
yeah. Daddy Darius, he's not safe.
Dana Dana wants to kill. She's out for blood, and I think if anyone's gonna die, it's Darius and Everwolf. I really
Right,
hate to say it.
yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Maybe Tara as like a villain will get taken out. Um but yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I don't think everyone's surviving.
villains can go. Like you can kill villains nice and easy, but like Darius,
Yeah, yeah. Oh god,
and
that will hurt so much if that's true. I really
that
hope
will hurt so
I
much.
I'm like of two minds of taking out Darius because I love him so much, but it would hurt so much to see him go. Um and then we end the episode right with this really dramatic shot.
Great shot.
Ida asks Luz, what did you see in there, right? And then we just see Luz looking
Turn
back.
around.
Turn around and look back as we see,
Can
you
you
know, like her eyes kind of like shine and
can
you
you
know.
can you just pause on that shot? I kind of
Yes,
I want
yes,
to dwell on that
definitely.
shot just a little. I'm not gonna
Absolutely.
take up to Thij's thinks Ida might die. They're not going to kill
They're not
Ida.
gonna
That's
kill
not
Ida.
happening.
I don't think so.
They're not
Yeah.
going to kill Ida. I don't think Lucy's going to go back to Earth. I think the realms are going to be united because that's part of what like the Titan plan thing is.
Right, right.
Anyway, this shot, I what is it? I called it when I was talking to you. I
The
called it
Chinatown.
the Chinatown look back. Yeah,
That's what it is, yeah.
the term I've coined. The Chinatown look back. It's one of my favorite kinds of shot. One, it's my it's definitely my favorite kind of reaction shot. Reaction shots are like a blessing or a curse. They're either going to be something really, really impactful and powerful, or they're going to be really annoying and unnecessary.
Right.
For example, if you ever watch a Baz Luhrmann film,
Right.
Baz Luhrmann loves reaction shots, and he overuses them in the most annoying, obnoxious way. Where like
For
it's
sure.
always, you know, thing happens. You see this a lot in like Moulin Rouge or his terrible Romeo and Juliet film. Something happens, cuts to character, fast zoom on their face as they gasp.
Have you ever watched have you ever watched like an Indian soap opera or like a Hindi soap opera?
Yes, they do it a lot in
They do
those
it a
too.
lot.
But in that, it's funny.
It's hilarious. It's so over dramatic.
In that, it's funny. They Bollywood really likes reaction shots. Bollywood really loves to do. I call it the Bollywood reaction shot because they always use like a fan to make the character's hair blow in the wind that would not possibly.
It's so
be
much
blowing
more
indoors.
egregious in the soap operas, though. Like it's so
like,
bad in the soap operas.
When Baz Luhrmann does it, it's really annoying. Anyway, I'm getting
Anyway,
off the point. The point is like reaction shots of this ilk communicate a lot without words, right?
right.
And it's something that actually the Owl House is very good at. Like the point where reaching out really got me was not even in what Luce was saying. It was Amity's reaction to it, where you just get the reaction shot, right?
Right.
Of her looking her in the eye and just like a gasp, like just doesn't know what to say. You know, the reaction shots are important because basically what you're communicating is, you know, really seemingly simple rudimentary information. So where a character is, what they are looking at, what are they responding to.
Right.
But these things have broader implications. So where a character is looking in the framing of a shot tells us implicit things about an image. So for example, there's that very famous painting. I can't remember what it's called. It's a very famous painting. It's typically used to give an impression of like it's the painting of the man standing atop the mountain looking across over the landscape, and his back is turned to us, right?
Right.
And that kind of shot gives us an impression of a character looking boldly across a plain, and they're turned away from us and they're looking into the light. They're looking into the source of the light. So the shading is behind them. We are behind them. They are looking forward. They are looking into their destiny, right? So that painting is typically used by a lot of people as a way of trying to communicate. Like it's like a shorthand for a person taking charge of their own destiny and taking charge. You know, it's a very empowering image. You know, so what's the opposite of that, right? The opposite of
Right.
that is a character, instead of turning away from us, turning around back to look at us, right?
Right.
A character turning back. So at the end of Chinatown, you've got that utterly devastating ending, utterly devastating,
Yeah.
which I won't spoil in case you haven't seen Chinatown, but like it ends with them turning around to take one last glance.
Yeah.
And that simple movement of turning around to look back over your shoulder, which is itself a euphemism, you know, um, uh, communicating regret, like such intense
Mm-hmm.
regret, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and that's what we're getting here with Luce. It's like without saying any words, she's basically saying, "Where do I even begin?" But it does also have that heavy sense of regret to it, of like,
Hundred percent.
what have I done?
Hundred
Um,
percent. Hundred
not
percent.
not Aaron Burr. Yes, that is the painting I'm talking about. Yeah, but it's like it. This is I love this kind of shot, and it's a perfect way to end the episode, and it
It is,
communicates so
yeah.
much in just like a couple seconds. What
Totally,
did you
totally.
see? And she doesn't answer. She just turns around. You get a similar shot actually in Blade Runner. It's a great way of communicating that sense of like just regret and
Yeah, yeah.
foreboding as well. It's the
Totally.
fact that there's the additional thing of that like she's looking at us, right? In
Right.
in Blade Runner or in Chinatown, they're not looking at us. They're looking past us. They're looking at something else. But here she's looking at us.
Right.
Like there's something piercing and foreboding about it. There's like an additional
100%.
layer
Yeah. Yeah,
of
absolutely.
communication there. This,
And
yeah, this episode, just
just
like Jesus
so
Christ.
good, so good. Yeah. And I really have to just highlight that idea of regret, right? And how well that's communicated in this shot, in Luz's expression. Because I think like, yeah, I mentioned this earlier, right? Like something that Luz tends to do, as we've seen throughout her time on the show, something that she does tend to do is blame herself very easily, right? She tends to think very lowly of herself. She tends to like be very hard on herself when she feels like things are her fault, right? And so I feel like that's going to be a big piece of something that she'll have to kind of overcome throughout this these next few episodes, right? Really kind of coming to terms with the fact that like, yes, she was manipulated by Philip, and like we can draw the events of today back to those original events, but that doesn't mean it's your fault, Luce, right? Like it's not Luce's fault that Philip was an asshole that manipulated her, right? But of course Luce is going to blame herself, and of course she's going to take that responsibility on, because we've seen her do that before. And how she's going to deal with that, I'm interested to see if she'll like confide in Amity and to see if she's going to help in that way. I really, my heart breaks for Luce, and we kind of saw this coming, but now that we're actually here, right? Like it's tough. It's a tough place to be in, and I'm really, like you said, I'm interested to see how they handle this moving forward. And I saw a lot of people talking about how like they were scared for Luce at this point, and like I can see where they're coming from. She doesn't have the Titan blood at this point, so she's like really at her low point, right? She can't even go home. She can't even see her mom anymore at this point. And she's
It's
trapped, right?
it's never too late, is what I would remind people.
Yes, yes,
Stories have reached lower points than this. Like,
yes.
um, a- I'm not going to mention Berserk. I'm not going to mention
No,
Berserk.
yeah.
A more appropriate comparison would be something like Wonder Song. Like, there's a point in Wonder
Right.
Song where it really feels hopeless, where you're like, Jesus, like, where do we even go from here? Like, there's
Yeah,
literally a point in
yeah.
the story where the world almost ends. Like, it's literally on the brink of ending, and they still bring it back in a way that's emotional and narratively satisfying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like so satisfying. Like, but people, I know a lot of people have been really really down about this episode. In kind of a, I don't want to say a backhanded way, but in
Mm.
effect, it's sort of like a positively backhanded way.
Mm.
And I do want to comment on that, and that's not intended as a way of calling people pathetic for being so emotionally invested. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. I think
Right.
it's great. I think it's really really good that people are so invested in this show and so invested in these characters that they're actually scared to keep watching it, because they're like that it's actually having that effect on them. I completely sympathize with that.
Yeah.
You know, that is a sign that the show is doing something right, and that the
Right.
show is connecting with people on that level, and I'm not judging at all for that. I mean, Kentaro Miura's death recently devastated me.
Right.
And realizing that story of Berserk had come to an end devastated me. I cried for days over that. You know, it's great that people are affected like that. Don't let it affect you, because it could spoil your enjoyment of this show. Like, the worst thing would be for your love of this show to have that backhanded effect on you as a viewer, where you're actually afraid to engage with it on its own level. So just remember, like, this is still a Disney show. This is still a Disney cartoon. You're not reading Berserk, okay?
Yeah,
They're not going to murder all the characters. You're at this point in the story where things are, things are going to be at the low point for a bit. I don't think they're going to start moving us into the third act until they're ready for that third season. But things are going to be good in the end. You know, this is still a Disney cartoon. Don't let, like, this is dramatic and that's great, but don't let it spoil your enjoyment of the show. Is what I would say to those people.
Definitely. And yeah, I feel like the past couple episodes have sort of indicated to us that, like, what we thought was the solution is not the solution, and we're gonna have to figure out another solution, right? Like, so Luz has been trying to figure out how to build the door from Philip's notes. I actually think at this point, like, that's a impossible task, because I think, like, it's very likely that Philip didn't put the entire instructions in the book, right? Like, if he wanted to prevent someone from making another door in the future, like, why would he put the correct instructions in there? So maybe that's why Luz's initial attempt didn't go perfectly. So I feel like that might have a role to do with it. And I think at this point too, it's supposed to indicate to us that, like, yes, we're out of Titan blood, so that's not going to be the solution, right? Like, Titan blood is not going to be our way home. But what is? There's got to be another way, right? There has to be another way. And what that other way is, I think, is the new mystery that we have to now unravel, right?
So what you're saying is they need to get a GAT.
Yes, clearly. I think they could probably build one on the Boiling Isles, right? Anyway.
I mean, yeah.
But yeah, I do hope that we find out what's going on with Hunter soon, where he's running off to, how he's gonna kind of reconcile these ideas. And you know, him being with, at least he's got Flapjack, at least he's not completely alone, right? And where he'll run off to, whether he'll run to a specific person or whether he'll run off on his own and try to figure it out himself. I think all of those are real possibilities. So I'm really curious to know where they're going to take both his character and Luz's character from this point. Can
I tell people before we end?
Yeah.
Can I tell people about the dream I had?
Yeah, please. I think that was actually really funny. Please do.
You'll make of this what you will. I had a dream.
A prophetic dream.
A prophetic dream. I had a dream the night before this episode aired, because, like, I didn't know what this episode was going to be. I'd been actively avoiding promos. Like, all I knew is that it was like a favorite, like a personal favorite of a bunch of people who worked on it. I had a dream that I watched the episode, and it wasn't even like a full episode. It was just literally just like, it was Hunter singing the George Michael song Freedom from 1990. And it was like, and I'd said to you, it was just like an animated music video. It was the music video of Freedom, but they just animated it they like rotoscoped it with Hunter. But that's wrong. Like, I watched the music video from Freedom, and it's not that. It's actually the music video from Faith from the same album. So my brain, like, he was doing it was like the setup for the music video from Faith, but he was singing Freedom.
But it was Hunter singing.
It was Hunter singing, and it was Zeno Robinson's voice, and he was, let me tell you, he was tuneful. But like, the weird thing is that actually the lyrics of Freedom are kind of not that inaccurate to Hunter's place in the story right now.
Oh my gosh.
So I'd encourage you all to, like, look up the lyrics and, like, pay attention to a few specific bits, and you'll go like, oh yeah, I can see that.
If the show doesn't end with a concert and Hunter playing and singing Freedom by George Michael, then this show just is not even worth watching. 0 out of 10.
This show is trash. But like, lines like, you know, I don't belong to you and stuff like that. And, you know, I was listening to the song that I drew up some fan art of him, like, taking the cape off. And that was 100%, 50% inspired by the fact that actually happens in the episode, but the other 50% was inspired by the line, sometimes the clothes do not make the man, from the song Freedom.
Yeah.
And needless to say, I was let down by the fact the episode was not that.
Come
So
on,
I
Dana.
personally,
Where was the George Michael?
where was the George Michael? Pick it up, Dana. I'm personally giving, I'm personally giving this episode 0 out of 10. Not enough George Michael. Um,
Oh my
you
gosh,
know,
that's so
really
funny.
disappointing. That's my one major criticism of this episode. I think
Right.
I think you can all agree.
Yes, I think we could all agree in the chat that there was not nearly enough George Michael. George Michael. There was not any rotoscoped Hunter on top of the music video. Uh,
Who is the song by? It's Freedom, the 1990 song Freedom by George Michael, not by Wham. George Michael was in a band called Wham that was terrible, and the song Freedom is actually about him like breaking away from what his contract wanted him to be, and it's also like a queer classic because he was coming out as bi and like
no,
just wanted to be
Tom,
his own
you were wrong.
person.
The song is actually about Hunter getting away from Bellows and getting his freedom
That's
from
what the
Bellows. That's
song
what
is
the
about.
song is actually about.
George Michael said in an interview once that like, yeah, I'm coming out as bi, and also I'm trying to break away from this like toxic studio
And
contract
also,
I
I love
have.
the Owl House.
But like I had this dream. He said I had this dream once about this show in a few decades
In a few
called The Owl
decades.
House. And there's this character in it called Hunter, and like he explained this whole thing. Like, he's
Right.
like, yeah, you know.
And that's
And
actually
I
where
just really
Dana
wish
got the idea for the show, you know?
that's
Like
where Dana got the idea for
it's
the
a big
show.
time pool loop that just is full circle, actually.
Yeah.
That's exactly how this played out.
Except unlike Philip Whitterbane, George Michael was a lovely, wonderful man,
Right, exactly.
a good, kind man.
Again, these parallels to real life, right?
It's also just like a great song, and you all should listen to it. It's just I cannot get it out of my head. Ever since that dream, I've just had it playing on my head, just like
yeah, that's so funny.
before I be a slave, I'll be that one. I don't know. That doesn't sound like a line. Keep in mind, there was a Wham song called Freedom that's terrible, right? Don't
Yeah.
listen to that. The
I'm sure y'all can find
song,
it. Y'all can Google.
can I link it in the chat?
Oh,
Is
yeah.
that something I'm able to do? I'm gonna find it.
I don't think you can link it, but if you send me the link, I'll put it in.
Okay, I'm gonna send you the link, and also you should listen to it because it's
Yes.
a really good song. It's really funky.
Okay, I will.
Okay, I'm sending it to you. I've sent it to
yeah,
you. Here it is.
everyone just listen to this song, you know, once we end the stream, and just imagine Hunter singing the song.
Singing it. It's a very different energy to what actually happens in the episode. But the lyrics.
That's so funny. That's so funny. Yeah, it's all full circle, all coming together. But yeah, I think that's so funny though. That's really, really funny. Was there anything else you wanted to say about the episode?
Go check out my fan art. I did some fan art.
Yes.
I'm really proud of it, and I worked really hard on it.
Shia just linked Tom's Twitter in the chat, so if you want to check out Tom's awesome fan art, it's really, really good. Tom's been on a roll with the fan art lately, and it's awesome stuff. Go give it a like. Go give it a like. End of the stream, but Amphibia, yeah, unfortunately, I think we're gonna have to just skip over Amphibia this week. Again, just a couple of really quick things. Super fun episodes. I love the idea of old villains coming back. Trentonio was super fun. Domino 2, getting her back was super fun. I love that Domino 2 is the alpha of all the moths, and all the little baby moths, all the little baby caterpillars were hilarious too. My favorite shot of both of the episodes was when Wally was caught putting the little hat on the baby, and then they both make the face at the same time. That's my favorite frame of the episode. That was really funny and really good. Greatly enjoyable. Oh no, video unavailable?
Yeah, just
search Freedom.
it. Don't listen to the Wham one. The one that Thij quoted, I think, is the Wham one. The Wham one is terrible. It's real bad. It's from an album called Listen Without Prejudice, 1990. It's not Wham. It's just George Michael. Go look it up. It's really good.
Yes, I'm sure you can find it if you search. Was there anything that you wanted to say about Amphibia before we wrap up?
I really liked the bit when Anne turned to Sasha and said, what are we? Some kind of Amphibia 2022?
Oh my god, yeah, right.
That was, and then the credits rolled. I thought that was really cool.
Oh my gosh. No, yeah, but these were fun episodes. Sasha being a dog person and getting scratched up by the cat was also funny. There's some good gags, yeah, and of course Matt Browley said on Twitter, right, that these were the last fun episodes that we're gonna get. So I hope we all savored the gags. I hope we all got some good final chuckles in there, because it's all downhill from here, baby.
What I like to interpret it as, like, the following episodes, they're not even going to be like intense or anything. They're just going to be really boring. It's like these are we're not going to have any fun. There's going to be no more fun to be had in this show. The rest of the episodes are just like Andreas just has like a massive heart attack, and they win just because he has a heart attack, and that like they don't even have to fight him. And then the rest of the episodes are just like 20 uncut minutes of Hot Pop doing horticulture.
Yeah. I was just asked in the chat what we thought of the finale poster, and I actually have not seen it, so I'm going to...
I liked the outfits that Mr. and Mrs. Boonshaw are wearing. That was neat.
Oh, yeah, they're wearing like some crazy... I haven't seen this before, so I'm literally just looking at it right now. Yeah, they're wearing some crazy outfits. I love all the characters. I love Darcy in the middle, looking scary and menacing. Freaking Domino 2 is also there. That's awesome. Here, I'm gonna quickly link this in the chat so y'all can...
Thijs, please tell me if we're pronouncing your name wrong. I have no idea how to pronounce that name. Thijs, 90% sure Hot Pop will die. Hot Pop ain't gonna die. They're not like... If Amphibia is even less likely to kill anybody.
If they kill Hot Pop, if they kill a character, don't forget that there has been an established necromancy spell already been established as canon. So if they do kill off a character, they might just come back to life.
They're not like... Amphibia's not. Amphibia's definitely gonna have a happy ending. They're not like,
yeah, for
that's
sure.
not, it's a very different show.
100%. But yeah, I'm excited for the Amphibia finale. I think it's gonna be super satisfying, super intense. I love the way the show has been going so far. I love how all these old season 1 characters are coming back to join the battle. That was something that like that we kind of got in shows like Gravity Falls and stuff like that, where we saw like, you know, oh, the whole team is back together to fight, but we never got like them actually coming together. So the fact that we're getting those in like these last few pre-finale episodes of Amphibia is really fun. We're actually getting the gang together, and like, you know, now we have a tactical expert, and now we have air support, right? So like it's really cool kind of seeing all those pieces kind of fall into place.
It's just like Charles in Charge.
Yep. Oh no, they just let us know how to pronounce it. I feel bad not pronouncing it correctly. Yeah, 50-50 on whether Animal lose an arm or Sasha losing an eye, though. That's still totally possible, I think.
It would be really funny if neither happened and they just been screwing with us.
Yeah, just the fandom like reading too much into stuff. Yeah, and the next couple episodes are going to be like longer too, right? Like there's like a 29-minute episode and then like a 40-minute episode, I think, for the finale. So yeah, that'll be very intense, I'm sure.
Yeah, we're like literally coming up to the end, huh?
Yeah, we're there. We're almost at the end. I'm excited though. Like I'm sad to see Amphibia go because I've loved the show so far. I've loved chatting with all of you about it every week. But I also am really excited to see the end. I think it's going to be a really satisfying and fun ending.
So what you're saying is you hate Amphibia and you just want it to be over.
Without the H, and the IJ is an H, so it's. The IJ is an H. So it's like
without the
this?
H and the
is
IJ
like
is pronounced. Can we just give you a new name?
No, I want to be respectful. But if you do have another nickname or something you want us to call you, let us know.
I literally don't know what you're trying to say. I'm so sorry.
If you're in our Discord server, maybe you can let us know in there as well. But anyway, we're at about the 3-hour mark for the day. I think we're probably going to wrap it up now. Is there any other final thoughts we had about Owl House or Amphibia before we call it a day, Tom?
No final thoughts. I want to go and get some tea.
Yes,
and I'm
tea
tired.
Sounds lovely. Alrighty, y'all. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for today. Thank you all so much again for joining us, and thank you all for your for your patience with the technical difficulties this morning. I really appreciate all of you hanging out and waiting for us as we were fighting with OBS to get this going. But yeah, really grateful for all of y'all being here today. These were such awesome episodes to get into, and I'm so grateful that y'all have been joining us every week to talk about these with us. And I'm really excited to get to the end and to get to these intense final episodes with all of y'all. And excited to hear your theories, excited to hear your reactions, excited to hear all of your thoughts and introspections on the shows. It's been a lot of fun getting to share it with all of y'all. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up for today. We'll be back next week, 11 a.m. PST on Sunday to talk about the next episodes. I'm not going to look up the episode titles right now because we've already gone on long enough. Yes, Bob Hoskins, Nightbot fighting everyone apparently right now.
Nightbot is such an asshole.
What were you trying to say?
I was just like, they because I used the question mark multiple times.
I see. Okay.
They say I'm spamming. See, Obadiah is your arch enemy, but Nightbot's my arch enemy.
Yes.
One of these days, we all know it's going to end with one of us at the end of a sword.
Nightbot versus Tom. Yeah, totally.
We're going to take each other out. It's going to be like the end of Heat.
Yes, totally. Alrighty, well, Nightbot might be able to silence you in the chat, but they can't silence you in the Discord calls.
And they certainly can't silence me in Mortal Kombat.
Exactly. Alrighty, y'all. So we'll see you next week for the next episode discussions. Thank you all again once more for joining us today. This was super fun. I really enjoyed all of your thoughts, and hopefully we'll see you all next week for the next episode. All right.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.